Chapter 168. With a bang, Daoist Fangjing fell heavily on the ground. Xianxia immediately summoned her white silk handkerchief, but that spiritual aura didn't appear again. From beginning to end, she didn't know where that spiritual aura came from. Daoist Fangjing, who was lying on the ground, groaned and struggled to get up. His face was pale. "This, fellow Daoist Fangjing, it seems the master of this place doesn't want us to take the sunstone." After confirming there was no danger, Xianxia put down her magic weapon and slowly scanned the stone room. This was obviously a technique that surpassed their realm, but it didn't kill them. It seemed the master just didn't want them to take the sunstone. Daoist Fangjing looked up at the sunstone on the top of the stone wall, his face full of unwillingness. If that was the case, wouldn't this trip be returning empty-handed? At that moment, several rumbling noises were heard. It seemed one of the stone slabs was moved. The two of them looked towards the source of the noise and were both overjoyed. The stone wall in the innermost part of the stone room suddenly moved, revealing a stone table with several things on it. However, after the previous incidents, the two of them became more cautious. After being overjoyed, they didn't immediately go to take the things. Daoist Fangjing once again released his first-rank spiritual beast. The bird screeched then flew towards the stone table in a wobbly manner. Not only Daoist Fangjing, but Xianxia was also extremely nervous. Ever since they came here, they hadn't obtained anything except for a mother of moonstone and several bewitching moonstones. Instead, they used up several magic weapons and talismans. There were so many treasures here, but they weren't allowed to take them. The bird safely landed on the stone table. Daoist Fangjing's expression showed a hint of happiness, but soon, he became even more nervous. He ordered the bird to pick up something with its beak. The bird flapped its wings on the table and ran towards a bell-shaped object. Soon after, it picked up the bell handle and was about to fly away. Bang! The smoke that came out of nowhere suddenly dispersed, and a spiritual aura suddenly sprang out. Xianxia was about to use her protective aura, but in an instant, she lost control of the spiritual aura in her body and couldn't move. At that moment, a deep and dignified voice rang out in the stone room. "Junior, who came to my Ziwei's Immortal's cave?" Xianxia was stunned. Could it be? Daoist Fangjing finally regained his composure. He answered first, "Junior Fangjing, a little individual cultivator. Greetings to Senior Ziwei." After a nascent soul cultivator passed away in meditation, he would cut off a part of his divine sense and store it somewhere. Presumably, this could only be done by the master of this place, the nascent soul cultivator who called himself Wanderer Ziwei. Junior Xianxia, a disciple of Xianxia school. Greetings to Senior Ziwei. Faced with the nascent soul cultivator's question, Xianxia still chose to speak the truth even though she was only using her divine sense. Xianxia school? Upon hearing what she said, Wanderer Ziwei was slightly surprised. Soon after, he asked, "Who's that Lord Daoist Pill Spirit to you?" "Dao Lord Pill Spirit?" Xianxia pondered for a moment then answered, "Lord Daoist Danling was a senior of my group. He passed away 5,000 years ago." "It's been 5,000 years. Upon hearing what she said, Wanderer Ziwei was silent for a long time before he finally heaved a long sigh. "It's actually been 5,000 years. Xylan, it seems you've also..." In the next second, his voice regained its calmness. He said, "Juniors, what's your request for coming to my Ziwei's Immortal's cave?" Daoist Fangjing was delighted to hear that. Just as he was about to speak, Xianxia beat him to it. "May I know Senior's purpose in luring us here?" A foundation-building cultivator talking to a nascent soul cultivator like that was indeed arrogant. Afraid Xianxia would say something wrong, Daoist Fangjing hastily said in a low voice, "Fellow Daoist, don't talk nonsense." Xianxia remained unmoved. She dared to say that because she knew Wanderer Ziwei wouldn't get angry. Sure enough, in the next second, Wanderer Ziwei smiled. "Junior, you're really quick-witted. You're right, I indeed led you here on purpose." "What's Senior's purpose?" Wanderer Ziwei didn't answer but asked instead, "Juniors, what do you think of my Immortal's cave?" This time, Daoist Fangjing answered first. Senior's Immortal's Cave is worthy of being a nascent soul cultivator's Immortal's Cave. There are layers of formations and a lot of treasures. Formations, treasures. Wonder Ziwei repeated, then suddenly asked, "Then do you want to get them?" Daoist Fangjing was both surprised and delighted, but he didn't dare to be rude. He cast a glance at Imo Tienga, then answered, "Of course. But with Senior's abilities, we don't have a choice." "Hee Junior, you're quite slippery." Wonder Ziwei dismissed them with a smile. "Don't worry, I'm not a cruel person. If you honestly answer me, I naturally won't hurt you." What he said made Imo Tienga secretly criticize him. Not a cruel person? They haven't even entered this Immortal's Cave, but out of the 9 people, only the 2 of them are still in good condition. Daoist Fangjing is also injured from head to toe. He's still not a cruel person? Do you have any objections? Wonder Ziwei's voice suddenly sounded as if it was right next to her ear. Imo Tienga was startled. Could it be that Wonder Ziwei can read minds? Mind reading? More or less. Before she could finish her question, Wonder Ziwei already said, "When I was alive, I once tried to advance to the deification realm. Although I failed, I possessed part of a deification cultivator's abilities. Mind reading is one of them." Imo Tienga was stunned. That seemed to be the case. When she was with Yuan Bao and Zhong Muling, she had a vague feeling that she couldn't hide anything. It was slightly different from the feeling when she couldn't help but tell the truth when she was under spiritual aura pressure. In that case, didn't this mean that Wonder Ziwei had already reached the peak of the nascent soul realm? It was just that he hadn't truly advanced to the deification realm yet? "Junior, you've actually met deification cultivators?" An invisible spiritual aura circled around Imo Tienga and she asked. Imo Tienga was startled. She hastily concealed her spirit and chi to prevent herself from letting her imagination run wild. "I'm reading. If I overthink it, won't I let others know everything?" Just as she thought about that, before she could say anything, she heard Wonder Ziwei say with a smile, "Junior, don't panic. Mind reading has to be actively used, so I won't use it on you. You can take your time and tell me." What he said sounded rather amiable. Imo Tienga heaved a sigh of relief, but she was still worried. She answered, "Yes, Junior indeed had the honor of meeting deification seniors." "What were the names of those 2 people? How did you meet them?" "One of them was surnamed Zhong, and his name was Muling. The other was called Daoist Yuan Bao, but I don't know if that's his real name or his Daoist name." "Zhong Muling Yuan Bao." The voice murmured, "They've actually reached the deification realm." Imo Tienga was surprised. "Senior knows these 2 deification seniors?" "Sort of." Wonder Ziwei said faintly, "They're cultivators from the same era as me, but they came from Yunzhong and aren't cultivators from the celestial pole." Imo Tienga also knew about this. Yuan Bao once told her a lot about them. They were originally cultivators from Yunzhong, but later on, they wandered around and arrived in the celestial pole. After they advanced to the deification realm, they had no fixed abode and could only wander around the virtual sky world. "All right, Junior, tell me, how are they doing?" "They're very well." Based on what he said, there seemed to be no old grudges between Zhong Muling and Yuan Bao, so Imo Tienga felt relieved. During the demonic beast riot last time, Junior accidentally broke into the 2 deification seniors' Immortal's caves and was saved by them. That's how I met them. After Junior recovered, I left. It seems they came here to travel. Wonder Ziwei didn't say anything for a long time. After a long time, he finally heaved a deep sigh. "Hearing about my old friends made me sigh with emotion. Junior, since you and my old friends are old friends, I won't make things difficult for you. To tell you the truth, in these 5,000 years, every once in a while, I would weaken the formation and release spiritual chi to lure foundation establishment cultivators like you to come here. Unfortunately, not a single person has ever come here." Sure enough, Imo Tienga had long expected this, but she didn't know why Wonder Ziwei didn't lure core formation or nascent soul cultivators here. "I had a lifelong regret that I couldn't resolve before I passed away, so I sealed my divine sense in my Immortal's cave. If someone passed the test and reached this place, they could come out and meet me. If you can help me with this matter, I'll give you treasures. Tiange and Daoist Fangjing glanced at each other. Both of them were a bit surprised. 6 of them died, 1 was seriously injured, and only 2 of them reached this place in one piece. It was actually because a nascent soul cultivator who passed away already had something to ask of them. Moreover, this still didn't explain why Wanderer Ziwei didn't let core formation or nascent soul cultivators come here. Wanderer Ziwei was a peak stage nascent soul cultivator who was just a step away from the deification realm. Presumably, nascent soul cultivators would scramble for treasures like ducks. Don't you understand why I let foundation building cultivators come here? Daoist Fangjing cupped his hands. Senior, please forgive us. Juniors indeed don't understand. If Senior has something to ask of us, wouldn't it be better to let core formation or nascent soul seniors come? They're quite capable, so it'd be easy for them to complete Senior's task. That being said, why would core formation and nascent soul cultivators be afraid of a divine sense? No matter how high my cultivation level was in the past, I'm only left with this bit of divine sense now, so I can't intimidate them, Wanderer Ziwei said faintly. Besides, the task I asked of you has nothing to do with your cultivation level. That was true. If a core formation or nascent soul cultivator discovered an immortal's cave like this, they'd probably go looking for treasures by force. Even if Wanderer Ziwei was a genius when he was alive, he was only left with a wisp of his divine sense now. Tiange said, Senior, aren't you afraid that we'll agree but won't do it? Perhaps Junior will go back to my school and inform my masters, then order them to come here and look for treasures? Little girl, you're quite bold, Wanderer Ziwei said with a smile. However, in the next second, his voice turned cold. Since I let foundation building cultivators come here, I naturally have a way to deal with you. Right after he finished speaking, Tiange suddenly felt a pain in her head. That wisp of spiritual aura drilled into her brain, but it immediately withdrew. She couldn't help but scream in pain. After the pain passed, she felt nothing was amiss. She turned around and saw that Daoist Fangjing was also bewildered. Wanderer Ziwei said indifferently, I left imprints in your sea of knowledge. If you don't come back in time, these imprints will activate, and at this point, the threat in his words was very obvious. Tiange was shocked and angry. She wasn't a person who went back on her word. If this Wanderer Ziwei gave her treasures and asked her to do something, she would naturally keep her promise. However, this kind of method really made her feel indignant. Junior, Wanderer Ziwei said with a smile, don't be agitated. Don't forget that your life is still in my hands. With this reminder, Tiange managed to suppress her anger, but she still couldn't help but sneer. Senior, since you know I'm a disciple of Xianxia school, so what if I left an imprint? I'll go back to my school and ask the seniors in my school to resolve it with me. Resolve it? Wanderer Ziwei's voice was full of arrogance. There aren't any deification cultivators in your school, right? Even late-stage nascent soul cultivators can't resolve my unique technique. After he said that, he said curiously, Girl, are you always so direct with your words? Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? After all, there are 2 of you, you're not my only choice. Really? Tiange said coldly, Senior waited for several thousand years before the 2 of us finally came. Senior, aren't you afraid you won't be able to complete your task? Wanderer Ziwei paused for a moment, then smiled bitterly. You're just a little girl in the foundation building realm, how can you be so sharp-tongued? It doesn't matter if you're afraid or not. You should rejoice that I've been cultivating my mind and temperament here for more than 1,000 years, so I'm no longer as hot-tempered as I used to be. Otherwise, once he finished speaking, he once again muttered to himself, However, you're very similar to her. Could it be that Xylin? Wanderer Ziwei said, All right, I won't talk nonsense with you. I won't be harsh. As long as you finish the task I'm giving you within 100 years and come here, I'll give you all of my treasures. I'll give them to whoever finishes first, but you'd better not kill each other for the sake of treasures. The imprint I left in your sea of knowledge will tell me, so I won't give you anything at that time. All of my treasures? Upon hearing what he said, Daoist Fangjing promptly asked, May I ask what Senior wants us to do? I want you to find a person's corpse, bring it to me, and bury it with me. Tiange blurted out. Could it be the Xylan that Senior keeps talking about? Correct. Wanderer Ziwei's voice was still faint, but Tiange felt it was filled with endless desolation. I already knew I wouldn't be able to see her. It's enough as long as I'm buried with her. Tiange couldn't help but ask in a low voice. She? Who is she? Her question made Wanderer Ziwei silent. After a long time, so long that Tiange thought he wouldn't answer, she finally heard his voice. She's my wife. Tiange was dumbfounded. Since she's Senior's wife, why, Junior, why do you have so many questions? Wanderer Ziwei smiled bitterly. I'm only separated from my wife and couldn't be together anymore, so I want you to bring her corpse back. You're still trying to get to the bottom of this? Despite that, he sighed softly, then said slowly, my wife's surname is Xiao, and her name is Xylan. She's a cultivator from Xuanji School. Do you know about Xuanji School? Daoist Fangjing said in a low voice. Xuanji School was established by the original disciples after Tianliang School was exterminated several thousand years ago. However, Xuanji School no longer exists today. It was divided into Gigu School, Qiqiao Sect, and several other groups. Wanderer Ziwei was stunned. Xuanji School also, correct. As far as Junior knows, it was because of internal strife. However, it's been a long time, and Junior's only an individual cultivator, so I don't know the inside story. In the end, they couldn't escape the fate of being exterminated. Wanderer Ziwei sighed, then said, how's Gujian Sect now? It still exists, right? Right now, Gujian Sect is the third largest cultivation group in the Celestial Pole. It's very powerful and has many disciples. That's good. When Gujian Sect was mentioned, Wanderer Ziwei's tone was indifferent, as if he didn't care. After a pause, he said slowly, I was originally a swordsman in the secular world. When I was 20, my master discovered that I had spiritual roots, so I came to Gujian Sect. Later, I became a sword cultivator and wholeheartedly cultivated. When I was 100 years old, I formed my gold core and reached the nascent soul realm at 300 years old. I don't dare to say I'm a genius, but I'm still a rare sword cultivator. Because I was born in the secular world of Jianghu, I've always had a fiery temper. My Gujian Sect has always been combative, so we didn't restrict our disciples. When I just formed my gold core, several senior martial brothers and I exterminated Tianliang School because someone from Tianliang School offended my senior martial brother. Tiange was a bit shocked. Gujian Sect now adopted the image of the righteous path and always restricted its disciples. As it turned out, it was also, at that time, I didn't take this matter to heart. Who would have thought that 100 years later, I'd meet a little girl in the foundation building realm? When he spoke about this matter, Wanderer Ziwei's voice finally fluctuated. That was my wife, Xylan. I knew she was a disciple of Xuanji School, but I didn't care. So what if I was the one who did that? With my strength and identity at that time, if I wanted to marry her, how could a small cultivation group like Xuanji School dare to refuse? However, I didn't want Xylan to know, lest she thought I was using my power to oppress people. Xylan only knew it was a disciple of my Gujian Sect who exterminated Tianliang School, but she didn't know I was one of them. Although she hated Gujian Sect, she still married me. We were husband and wife for 200 years. I successfully formed my nascent soul, and Xylan also formed her gold core. Her aptitude was excellent, and with my help, forming her nascent soul was almost inevitable. I thought we'd continue loving each other like this for 1,000 years. 200 years. Wanderer Ziwei should be 400 years old now, right? Was that when he betrayed his sect and lived in seclusion here? Right at that time, Xylan heard from my senior martial brother that I participated in the extermination of Tianliang School, so she came back to question me and sever ties with me. Only then did I know Xylan wasn't just a disciple of Xuanji School. Her clan used to be a great clan in Tianliang School. In other words, her elders and relatives might have all died in my hands. Wanderer Ziwei narrated faintly with a calm tone. We've been husband and wife for 200 years, So how could I not know her temper? She was usually kind, but she was very stubborn. Once she decided on something, she absolutely wouldn't change her mind. Since she severed ties with me, she wouldn't see me again for the rest of her life. It was just that I had delusions that she could come back, so I betrayed my sect and came to this secular world to live in seclusion. I entrusted a letter to her telling her that if she forgave me one day, she should come find me. I regretted what happened in the past, but there was nothing I could do. I gave up everything, which meant I'd severed my past. At this point, Wanderer Ziwei finally sighed, revealing some of his emotions. Sure enough, I waited for more than 1,000 years, but she never came. Later, I heard she formed her nascent soul and became the Grand Supreme Elder of Xuanji School, but she never came to see me. So that was what happened. Xiao Xilan was a disciple of Xuanji School, so it was no wonder there were traces of Tianliang School everywhere in this valley. They were husband and wife for 200 years, so all of this must have been passed on by Xiao Xilan to Wanderer Ziwei, right? Juniors, go to Xuanji School's former encampment, find Xilan's corpse, and bury it with me. I'll give you the things I've collected in my lifetime. Chapter 169. As long as he found the corpse, he would be able to obtain the lifetime savings of a peak nascent soul cultivator. It sounded like a very good deal, but... Mo Tiange chuckled softly. Senior, your wife was a cultivator from 5,000 years ago and it's hard to find where she was buried, but how dangerous would the burial place of a nascent soul cultivator be? Since your wife is a brilliant disciple of the profound secret sect, her attainments in formations should not be inferior to seniors, right? We're just foundation establishment cultivators. How can we guarantee that we'll be able to bring back the corpse safely? Correct, Daoist Fangjing said. We haven't even obtained any benefits, yet we already have a slim chance of surviving. This transaction isn't fair. Wanderer Ziwei burst out laughing. Good. If you're too stupid, then it's not worth it for me to make this deal. He paused for a moment, then said casually, you want the benefits first, sure. Not only will I give you benefits, but I will also give you 200 years. Little girl, with your age and cultivation level, 200 years should be enough for you to advance to the core formation realm, right? However, don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you've formed your gold core. Once the imprint in your sea of knowledge takes effect, it will be effective for life. With a single thought, your life and death will be in my hands. And you don't have much lifespan left. You don't even have 200 years left. Daoist Fangjing was a bit nervous. What he said just now was because he was unwilling to be ordered around by the senior, but that didn't mean that he didn't think it was a good deal. He still had 70 to 80 years left in his lifespan. During this period, it was very likely that he could find the remains of a nascent soul cultivator. By then, his chances of advancing to the core formation realm would be greatly increased. Even if he took a step back, he wasn't like the little girl beside him. In the past 200 years, he had already passed away, which meant that he hadn't put in anything. He was afraid that this senior would cancel his trading rights upon seeing that he didn't have much time left in his lifespan. Then, he would have missed a good opportunity for nothing. Mo Tiange didn't know whether this Wanderer Ziwei was using the mind-reading technique or not. After a short pause, he said unhurriedly, you don't need to worry. Having another opportunity to find Xilan's skeleton is always good for me. In the past, in order to wait a few hundred more years, I once searched all over the celestial pole and refined a longevity pill. Now, there's only one left, so I'll give it to you. Longevity pill? Longevity pill. It was a longevity pill that even nascent soul cultivators would find difficult to obtain. Daoist Fangjing was stunned for a moment, then he became ecstatic. He stammered, Senior, longevity pills. His words were already incoherent. Upon seeing his reaction, Wanderer Ziwei burst into laughter, then said to Mo Tiange, as for you, there are several things you can choose from. The longevity pill is useless to you, but I can give you a dustless pill. I'm sure you know that after taking this dustless pill, your chances of reaching core formation will increase. If you feel that with the help of a sect elder, core formation won't be a problem, then I can also give you a top-grade magic treasure, or a secret book from the Profound Theory sect, the Profound Theory Formation book? Which one do you want? The Dustless Pill, the top-grade magic treasure, the Xuanji Array book. No matter which one it was, they were all treasures that were hard to find. Among them, although the Dustless Pill's value couldn't compare to the Longevity Pill, it was the most practical for foundation-building cultivators like them who were about to form their gold core. The top-grade magic treasure mentioned by a nascent soul cultivator naturally couldn't be compared to ordinary magic treasures. Perhaps other nascent soul cultivators would also covet it. The last one was the Xuanji Array book. The Tao of Formations was broad and profound. Brilliant formation books were naturally priceless, but ordinary cultivators simply didn't have the energy to study them. They could only be used to exchange for spirit stones, so they were the most useless. But for Mo Tiange, Senior, Junior wants the Xuanji Array book. Oh! Wander Ziwei was a bit surprised. Obviously, he didn't expect she would choose this book. Mo Tiange said, although dustless pills and magic treasures are precious to Junior, it's not impossible to obtain them. It's just that this Xuanji Array book is one of a kind. Correct. Since you're a Xianqing school disciple and have such a high cultivation level at such a young age, you must be an elite disciple. Presumably, it won't be difficult for you to obtain medicinal pills and magic treasures. However, you have to think about it carefully. My medicinal pills and magic treasures aren't ordinary goods. Ordinary core formation cultivators can't even imagine them. Wander Ziwei's words clearly showed he was treating her master as an ordinary core formation cultivator. Mo Tiange knew that for an almost omnipotent and stunning sword cultivator like Wander Ziwei, his collection might not be any worse than her master's. But if she wanted to form her gold core, Lord Daoist Jinghe would naturally find dustless pills for her. Lord Daoist Jinghe might also have top-grade magic treasures. As for the Xuanji Array book, since it was Xuanji School's secret, it must have its own uniqueness. If she missed it, it would be very difficult to obtain it again. Besides, she kept an eye on Xiao Xilin. Since Xiao Xilin was the Grand Supreme Elder of Xuanji School, the place where she was buried must also be filled with traps, right? With this Xuanji Array book, the danger would be greatly reduced. Junior has made up her mind. Mo Tiange paused for a moment then continued, however, Senior, fellow Daoist Fangjing doesn't have much time left in his life. You gave him a longevity pill, so even if he can't find it in 200 years, it won't be a loss to him unless he advances to the core formation realm. But even if I don't advance, I'll still have several hundred years to live. It'll be fine if I find his corpse, but if I can't, wouldn't that be too much of a loss? This isn't fair to me. Regarding this matter, Mo Tiange was very angry. She now had a bright future ahead of her, but someone placed a 200-year restriction on her for no reason. If she didn't succeed, she'd lose her life. How could she feel good about that? Besides, the reason she started cultivating was to fight for her freedom. Now that she was under someone else's control, it really wasn't a happy thing. It was just that this Wander Ziwei's methods were extraordinary and he didn't say anything too harsh, so she was willing to endure it. As if he could sense her anger, Wander Ziwei chuckled. Little girl, you're really unwilling to suffer even the slightest loss. All right, I'll give you another sunstone, how about it? As for the medicinal pills and treasures on this table, you can divide them among yourselves. In addition, as long as one of you brings back Xilin's corpse within 200 years, I'll erase the imprints in your sea of knowledge. Therefore, before you pass away, you must remember to come back and take a look. Maybe one of you has already completed it, Perhaps because he lived alone for 1,000 years, this Wander Ziwei obviously had an evil side to his character, so he was deliberately teasing them. Mo Tiange took a deep breath to calm herself down. She mustn't be angered by him first. All right, since it's like this, Junior can only accept it. 200 years. Junior is a bit curious. Once Senior opens the restriction that preserves your divine sense, can it last for as long as 200 years? Wander Ziwei umphed coldly and arrogantly. Little girl, even if you come from a famous cultivation group, your experience and knowledge are still shallow. This is a divine sense-severing technique I created myself. Not to mention 200 years, I'm afraid my divine sense will still be there even after you pass away. This Wang Ziwei couldn't be judged with common sense. As a sword cultivator, he was proficient in formations and mechanisms, and he could even concoct longevity pills and create all kinds of spells. Maybe he even dabbled in tool refining as well. He could practically be considered an all-rounder, so it wouldn't be surprising if he created some kind of unique divine sense technique. What about you? Seeing as Immortal was speechless, Wang Ziwei turned to ask Daoist Fangjing. Daoist Fangjing bowed and said, "That being the case, Junior will accept it." Good. Once Wang Ziwei finished speaking, Immortal felt the stagnant spiritual aura in her body loosen. In an instant, she regained control of her body and was able to walk again. She heaved a sigh of relief, then moved her hands and feet. She found that the spiritual aura in her body was unobstructed, and she no longer felt as heavy as before. If you have any other questions, just ask. If you step out of this immortal's cave, 200 years will begin. When the 200 years are up, regardless of whether you succeed or not, you must come back to see me. If I'm in a good mood, I might give you more time, but if I'm in a bad mood, 200 years. Disregarding Daoist Fangjing, Immortal felt she should be able to find some information within this time. Right now, she had a lot of questions. Ever since she stepped into this valley, her head was full of questions, but she couldn't answer them because she was always in danger. Now that she heard Wang Ziwei's words, she asked, "Junior indeed has a lot of questions. Would Senior be willing to talk about them in detail?" Wang Ziwei said, "Tell me first." Immortal thought for a moment, then said slowly, "First of all, are the gales and miasma related to the formation Senior laid? But why was it so easy for me to crack it when I reached the bottom of the valley? Secondly, what's going on with the stone statue and the altar at the entrance of Senior's Immortal's cave?" "Junior, you're really long-winded." Wang Ziwei interrupted her somewhat impatiently. "I'll tell you everything from the beginning to the end, all right?" The gales and miasma above the valley were indeed caused by the formation I laid. However, you were lucky to be able to crack it so easily. The answer to this question is the same as to your second question. In the past, when I lived in seclusion here, I saved several hundred mortals who were caught in the chaos of war. Seeing that they were pitiful, I brought them back to the valley. They worshipped me as their god, and the stone statue and the altar were erected by them, so I simply changed them to the entrance of my immortal's cave. The stone statue was my wife, Lun. The reason I saved them was because I thought Xylan didn't like me being violent and murderous, so I occasionally did good deeds. Therefore, when they wanted to carve the statue of a god, I let them carve it into Xylan's appearance. That way, when I occasionally came out of my immortal's cave, I could also see her appearance. Before I passed away, these mortals had already lived at the bottom of the valley for more than 1,000 years. From generation to generation, several cultivators emerged among them, but unfortunately, their spiritual roots weren't good. Later, when I sensed my lifespan was nearing its end, I ordered those cultivators to move all the mortals out of the valley. There was an invisible spirit vein in this valley, but when I passed away, I laid this invisible spirit vein into an illusory formation, so it was no longer suitable for mortals to live in. It was precisely because there was no one here to maintain the formation that you were able to crack it so easily. I see. The illusory formation Senior laid in the hall was based on this invisible spirit vein? Why was everything fake but the damage was real? How did we get out of the formation? Wang Ziwei let out a cold "humph" and said, "This naturally involves complicated theories, which I've recorded in the Xuanji formation book. If you thoroughly study it, you'll naturally understand. As for breaking the formation, the 9 of you either had your blood essence sucked dry, were too weak, or had enough willpower to resist the illusory formation, so there was no need for the formation to exist. I was being lenient with this formation. It was to test your willpower. Otherwise, you would have been trapped inside for an eternity without being able to come out. This life is eternal, and eternity is only one day. Once this formation is activated, everything will end after one day. If you can't control yourself and are tempted, your blood essence will be exhausted and you'll die. If you can control yourself, your life will be like eternity, endless time, and in the end, you'll go mad and die. Therefore, if you can't break the formation, you can only die. Both Mo Tiange and Daoist Fangjing were terrified. Such a terrifying formation. Although it was an illusory formation, it was even more terrifying than a killing formation. At that moment, Daoist Fangjing was already faintly regretting his decision. Why wasn't that Xuanji formation book given to him? So this series of hurdles was only Senior's test? Correct. Daoist Ziwei's tone was faint and somewhat grim. If you can't even withstand the gales and miasma when you enter the valley, you're basically a cripple. As for the illusory formation, it's a test of your temperament and willpower. If you can't pass it, you probably won't have the patience to find Xylan's corpse. As for the bewitching Moonstone passage, it's a test of whether you're too greedy and calm enough. If you're easily bewitched by those treasures, I'm afraid you'll also go back on your word. Finally, there's the puppets here. If you can't even defeat 5 of them, your strength is too weak. Of course, in the end, you still have to let me see them myself. If you're too stupid, I'll kill you on the spot. The 2 of you aren't bad, you both passed. Mo Tiange couldn't help but feel angry at his words, but in the end, she forced herself to endure it. This Wanderer Ziwei was indeed selfish and callous. He set up so many hurdles, but he never considered the lives of the people who entered the valley. If Xiao Xylan was really like he said and didn't like disputes, she must have loved him very deeply to be able to tolerate him for 200 years and still be a loving couple. What's wrong, little girl? Do you have a problem with that? Mo Tiange couldn't help but say angrily, Senior, are you using the mind-reading technique again? Upon seeing her anger, Wanderer Ziwei burst out laughing. Don't be so fierce to me. Didn't your master tell you to be respectful to your seniors? I'll endure it. Mo Tiange took a deep breath and stopped talking. She was used to living with Lord Daoist Jinghe. She indeed didn't treat her seniors with enough respect. However, that also depended on who it was. After half a day, she roughly figured out Wanderer Ziwei's character. If this senior didn't meet his requirements, he wouldn't even spare a glance at her. If she passed his test, he wouldn't be stingy with what he had. Mo Tiange's display of her little temper might even make him more fond of her. Junior also wants to ask if Senior knows the art of engineering? Wanderer Ziwei was a bit surprised to hear her question. Little girl, you actually know the art of engineering? That's rare. The art of engineering has long been lost, and there aren't many people who know about it. So Senior really knows the art of engineering? Wanderer Ziwei said proudly, I know a little. What? Do you want me to teach you the art of engineering? Mo Tiange hastily said, if Senior is willing to teach me, Junior will definitely do her best to find your wife's corpse. Don't tell me you're not doing your best now. Don't forget that your life is still in my hands, Wanderer Ziwei said lazily. Ha, you're really interesting. Wanderer Ziwei laughed heartily when he saw Mo Tiange's expression. A strange spiritual aura circled around her body. All right, I'll be honest with you. It's not impossible for me to teach you the art of engineering, but let's talk about it when you fulfill your promise. If I teach you everything you want to know in one go, wouldn't that be boring? Mo Tiange's expression softened. What Wanderer Ziwei said was reasonable. He should teach her whatever she wanted to learn. How could there be such a cheap deal? Wanderer Ziwei changed the topic. Those puppets just now. You were the one who took them, right? Yes, Mo Tiange answered honestly. She then asked cautiously, does Senior want to take them back? It's hard for me without the puppets. How about this? You keep 4 puppets and take 2 with you. In exchange, I'll fix them and tell you how to control them. What do you think? Mo Tiange was overjoyed. Senior's words are worth 9 sacred tripods? Wanderer Ziwei humphed coldly. Why would I deceive a foundation-building junior like you? That's degrading. The more talented a person was, the more arrogant they were. Mo Tiange held back her words and took out the 6 stone sculptures one by one. Fortunately, she put them into her Qiankuan bag right after she killed them. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to get such a bargain. Daoist Fangjing's eyes reddened when he heard their conversation. He gave up on the stone sculptures because they couldn't be used anymore after they were destroyed, so he could only exchange them for spirit stones. He didn't expect the master of this place would come out and put forward such a condition. If he had known earlier, how could he have given them up? These were puppets in the late stage of the foundation building realm. If he could control them, his strength would increase exponentially. No matter how he thought about it, he could only blame his bad luck. Alas. Senior. While the spiritual aura was fixing the puppets, Daoist Fangjing asked respectfully, "May I ask Senior if we can take the treasures on the bewitching moonstones passage outside? If you have the ability, you can take them yourself." Daoist Fangjing was silent. He said that because he hoped this senior would tell them the method to crack the bewitching moonstones, but the answer, "Don't even think about the things on that passage. Don't underestimate that passage. Those bewitching moonstones are also a formation. If you take those things, the formation will be activated immediately. At that time, the entire Immortal's cave will turn into a killing formation." Spiritual aura rushed out of the stone sculpture puppet's ears. With several kacha sounds, several puppets stood up one by one. They held their swords in their hands, and their momentum immediately surged. After fixing the puppets, Wanderer Ziwei said, "That's enough. They're not good things anyway, so why do you feel pity? Little girl, I'll teach you the method to control these puppets now." Right after she said that, Emo felt a sudden pain in her head again, and some things appeared in her mind. When Emo Yaoqing taught her the art of Sunu, it was also directly imprinted with her divine sense. However, she was only a mortal at that time. Now, she was a foundation-building cultivator and had specially cultivated her divine sense, but she still had no ability to resist the divine sense left by a nascent soul cultivator. The path of cultivation was still very far away for her. "Since you're done asking, you can take your things and leave the valley." "Senior," Emotienga hurriedly said, "you haven't told us about your wife. Xuanji School has long been destroyed, and we don't know what happened back then. Where are we going to find your wife's corpse?" "I've already prepared this question for you," Wanderer Ziwei said lazily. Wanderer Ziwei said lazily, "There's a compartment under the table with several jade slips inside. Each of you can take one of them. All the information is recorded inside. If you still can't find her after you have this, you can consider yourself out of luck." "All right, since we've said what we wanted to say, this venerated one should also rest. Once you've taken your things, use that jade slip to open the exit and leave. Remember, you must come back 200 years later." Right after he finished speaking, the bizarre spiritual aura in the stone room slowly dissipated. Chapter 170. After the spiritual aura dissipated, Wanderer Ziwei also disappeared. He must have used some kind of secret technique to rest, waiting for them to wake him up 200 years later or for another group of people to enter the cave. The moment the spiritual aura completely dissipated, several things fell from midair and fell into their hands. Emotienga took them. One was a jade slip, and the other was a sunstone. Once she took the jade slip, she immersed her divine sense into it, and the words, "Xuanji Formation Book," were immediately imprinted in her mind. Daoist Fangjing was holding a jade bottle. He was opening it to verify its contents, and then he became ecstatic. Obviously, it was the longevity pills Wanderer Ziwei promised. Even if they only had these few things, coming here was already a big gain for them. There was no need to mention the longevity pills. If Daoist Fangjing didn't use them himself and sold them, they would definitely be enough to exchange for dustless pills. Emotienga just didn't know what Daoist Fangjing would choose. As for Emotienga herself, Daoist Fangjing already told her the value of the sunstone. Although it wasn't as priceless as longevity pills, it would surpass longevity pills if the Xuanji Formation Book was included. Besides, she also obtained 2 late-stage foundation building puppets. Emotienga smiled faintly as she stared at the 2 stone sculpture puppets in front of her. A method to control them emerged in her mind. She made a hand seal, then pointed at the space between her eyebrows, slowly drawing out her divine sense and probing the puppets' ears. These puppets only needed a tiny bit of their master's divine sense to make them recognize them as their master. Only people whose cultivation levels were much higher than theirs could forcibly erase their divine sense. In other words, only cultivators in the core formation realm or higher could erase their divine sense after she made these two puppets recognize her as their master. However, there was another method to make them recognize her as their master. If she didn't know, these two puppets would only be two pieces of trash. When Wanderer Ziwei repaired these puppets, he withdrew his divine sense from them. Now, she only needed to carry out the process of making them recognize her as their master. Her divine sense went into the puppets' ears. With two kacha sounds, the two puppets next to her moved their limbs and waved their stone swords. Emotienga was overjoyed. She could control them now. However, her divine sense wasn't strong enough, so she couldn't control them like Wanderer Ziwei did. Even though the puppets were asleep, they still had to act on their own. Fellow Daoist Fangjing, who was on the side, called out after a moment of hesitation. When he heard Emotienga telling Wanderer Ziwei about her master, he already knew that the name Yi Xiaotian was indeed fake. Furthermore, she was a disciple of Xianxia School, the second largest cultivation group in the Celestial Pole. He was an individual cultivator who had been living in the secular world for several hundred years and had seen many arrogant disciples from big cultivation groups. Now that he found out Emotienga's sect, he kept a respectful distance from her. Emotienga didn't know what he was thinking. Even if she knew, she wouldn't care. She only met Daoist Fangjing by chance. Even though he somewhat resembled second uncle, he was still a stranger. After leaving this place, everyone would go their separate ways, and they might never see each other again. Oh, fellow Daoist Fangjing. Upon hearing Daoist Fangjing's voice, Emotienga put away her stone sculpture puppet. In the current cultivation world, if a middle-stage foundation building cultivator carried two late-stage foundation building puppets with him, she knew how envious it was. It was better not to take them out if there was no need. Daoist Fangjing was already envious, and Wanderer Ziwei also said they couldn't hurt each other, so he could only stop thinking about it. Now, he pointed at the stone table and said politely to Emotienga, "Since we're done here, let's divide these things." Wanderer Ziwei already said they could divide the things on the stone table. Emotienga answered, "All right." Daoist Fangjing, however, didn't move. He looked at Emotienga rather nervously. "Fellow Daoist Yi, before this, you promised me I'd pick first. Does that still count?" Although Emotienga's skills surpassed cultivators in the same realm as her, Daoist Fangjing felt he wasn't much worse than her in fights of magical power. However, she just obtained two late-stage foundation building puppets. If she went back on her word, Daoist Fangjing knew he wouldn't be able to defeat her no matter what, so he could only accept it. Emotienga chuckled. "Of course it counts. Fellow Daoist, you pick first. There are 5 things here. You take 3 and I take 2. What do you think?" Daoist Fangjing was overjoyed. He cupped his hands towards her, then walked towards the stone table, slowly picking up the treasures. Emotienga shook her head, then slowly studied the Xuanji formation book on the side. She wasn't a cultivator born in Kunwu, so she couldn't learn to go back on her word for benefits. Her mother was an ordinary and kind-hearted mortal woman who taught her loyalty, filial piety, benevolence, and righteousness since she was a child. After she arrived in Kunwu, she learned how to survive in the cultivation world from second uncle and learned to plan for herself, but she didn't want to become the kind of person her mother didn't like. Besides, she wasn't a short-sighted cultivator. In the core formation realm and even the nascent soul realm, she would encounter inner demons. If she did evil recklessly, she would only be shackled. At that time, she would be plagued by inner demons and be unable to make a realm breakthrough. It would be too late even if she cried. "Fellow Daoist Yi, I've chosen." "Take a look," Daoist Fangjing said happily. Emotienga withdrew her divine sense, then walked towards the table. There were several things on the table: a bell, a pair of boots, a bottle of medicinal pills, an unknown ore, and a spiritual plant inside a jade box. Both the bell and the boots were magic weapons. Moreover, their grades were obviously extraordinary. They were indeed the collection of a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator. However, the boots were extremely short and were embroidered with orchids. They were actually women's boots. In addition, she also recognized that the spiritual plant was reviving grass. When they escaped from Mount Yunwu, second uncle was seriously injured. She once saw Qin Shi take this thing out and temporarily suppress second uncle's injuries. This kind of spiritual plant was said to have the effect of bringing the dead back to life when it was refined into medicinal pills. Even if it wasn't refined into medicinal pills, its healing effect would still be extraordinary. She didn't recognize the ore, and she didn't open the medicinal pills either. However, since they were placed together with these things, they must be treasures. Daoist Fangjing chose 3 things: the bell, the spiritual plant, and the medicinal pill. When he saw Emo Tienga's expression, he added, "Fellow Daoist, if there's anything you want, let's discuss it." Emo Tienga didn't say anything and just shook her head. Since she didn't have any objections, Daoist Fangjing put the boots and the ore away and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Among the 3 things he chose, the bell was an active attack magic weapon, while the boots were passive magic weapons. Active magic weapons were a bit more precious than passive ones, but the boots were women's, so he couldn't do anything about it. For cultivators, spiritual plants and medicinal pills were more important than ores, so he was a bit worried he might have gone too far by taking all the good things. In fact, this was just right for Emo Tienga. She didn't lack medicinal pills or spiritual plants. Although there was no resurrection grass in her virtual sky world, it wasn't like there weren't any spiritual plants that were better than it, and they were a lot older. Since she had medicinal pills, she naturally wouldn't lack magic weapons. Choosing these 2 things would be a loss for her. As for magic weapons, the shuttle of flying Apsara was a top-grade magic tool. She was very used to it, so she didn't need to change it for the time being. Once she formed her gold core, she would start refining her natal magic weapon. For her, attack magic weapons were just icing on the cake. Besides, these boots weren't bad either. Based on the abundant spiritual aura on them and the fact that they were placed here by Wanderer Ziwei, they were undoubtedly high-grade magic weapons. She picked up the boots and looked at them. She discovered the words, "cloud-treading boots," were embroidered on the heel. Cloud-treading? Presumably, it could increase the speed of flying? Fellow Daoist Yi, there's also this. Daoist Fangjing crouched down, took out 2 jade slips from a secret compartment under the table and handed one to her. Emo Tienga swept her gaze over it and found several identical jade slips inside. Presumably, Wanderer Ziwei also prepared them before he passed away, but she didn't know how many of them he had. Soon after, the 2 of them returned their things to their respective places, then started to study the jade slips, looking for a way out. According to the jade slips, there was a transporting formation inside this stone room which could directly transport people out. Emo Tienga remembered Shangruan was still on the stone platform outside the illusory formation, so she wondered whether she should take her away or not. However, after reading the entire jade slip, she still couldn't find a way to open the stone door from the inside. In the end, she had no choice but to give up. Although she found Shangruan pleasing to the eye, it wasn't worth breaking into the Immortal's cave for her. She hoped Shangruan would be lucky and wake up on her own. With her temperament, she would definitely be able to pass this test and escape this calamity. Once everything was settled, Emo Tienga and Daoist Fangjing followed the instructions in the jade slips. They opened the transporting formation and inserted the spirit stones into it. The transporting formation then emitted rays of light, and the scenery around them changed. The rays of light dissipated. Emo Tienga opened her eyes, then turned to look at her surroundings, feeling puzzled. The cold wind whistled past her ears, the towering glacier in front of her, and heavy snow swirling above their heads. They were standing on a piece of glacier which stretched as far as the eye could see, but they didn't know where they were. Daoist Fangjing, who was next to her, was startled. "Oh!" Emo Tienga hastily asked, "Fellow Daoist Fangjing, do you recognize this place?" Daoist Fangjing nodded, then looked at her and said, "This is the northernmost glacier." The northernmost glacier. When Emo Tienga heard what he said, she was also gobsmacked. The celestial pole's terrain consisted of the towering Kunwu mountain range in the east and southeast, the Devil's Path, which was separated from Tiandao sect by a mountain in the northeast, the uninhabited desert in the west, and the northernmost glacier. Wonder Ziwei's Immortal's cave was in the Wind Breath Valley of Mount Jiuling in Jin Country. It was located in the central region, so it was more than 10,000 miles away from here. This transporting formation actually sent them so far away. Mo Tiange took out the jade slip, but she discovered that the destination of the transporting formation wasn't written on it. Could it be that they were transported randomly? She wouldn't be able to get an answer to this question unless she completed Wanderer Ziwei's task and returned to the Wind Breath Valley. The two of them were standing on top of the glacier, braving the cold wind and heavy snow, but they actually felt a bit cold. Once cultivators built their foundation, they wouldn't be affected by heat or cold. This cold wind could actually make two middle-stage foundation building cultivators like them feel cold, so it obviously wasn't an ordinary cold wind. Mo Tiange clasped her palms together, then moved her spiritual aura to expel the coldness from her body. She then turned towards Daoist Fangjing and asked, "Fellow Daoist Fangjing, since you're here, what's your plan?" Daoist Fangjing muttered to himself for a moment, then answered, "I originally planned to return to Kunwu. I was just passing through the secular world to look for some special spiritual plants and spiritual panaceas. Since there's nothing else here, I'd better go back first." He paused for a moment, then asked Mo Tiange, "What about fellow Daoist Yi? What do you think about this matter?" Mo Tiange said faintly, "With our current abilities, this matter is still a bit difficult. Not to mention the fact that the message Senior Ziwei left behind was from 5,000 years ago, so it's hard to find it now. Moreover, Senior Zhao's burial place must have been very dangerous. If she passed away in a sitting posture in her cultivation group, Xuanji School is proficient in the Tao of formations, so the burial place of a nascent soul cultivator must have been filled with traps. If she ran into danger outside, it'd be even more terrible. If even a nascent soul cultivator ran into danger, wouldn't we be courting death if we went? Besides, whether we can find her or not is still a problem." Daoist Fangjing was silent for a long time. "I also think so. Fellow Daoist Yi, does that mean you don't plan to look for her now?" "I'll take my time looking for her and confirm the information first." What she said made Daoist Fangjing look envious. "Fellow Daoist Yi, you're an outstanding disciple of a famous cultivation group. If you want to look for something, it'll be much more convenient for you than for an individual cultivator like me." Mo Tiange just smiled but didn't say anything. She had a bit of an advantage in this matter. Daoist Fangjing might have wanted to cooperate with her in the beginning, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. After all, she was in a big cultivation group, so it would be much easier for her to look for things. She could also easily find companions with high cultivation levels. She wasn't like him, who had to painstakingly look for things on his own. Even if he found something, it would be difficult for him to find someone to take risks with him. Since he could do it alone, why should he share the fruits of his labor with others? Because of that, Daoist Fangjing swallowed his words and thought optimistically. Even if he didn't do anything, he wouldn't lose anything. This was also the reason why Mo Tiange didn't invite him. She obviously had a very high chance of obtaining everything, so why should she share it with others? Although she wasn't a profit seeker, she also wouldn't be benevolent enough to share things that were already in her mouth with others. The two of them had a tacit understanding, so they didn't continue talking about this matter. Instead, they changed the topic to the matter at hand. Does fellow Daoist Fangjing want to leave this place immediately and return to Kunwu? What about fellow Daoist Yi? I'm not in a hurry to go back. Taking a stroll around is also good. Upon hearing what Mo Tiange said, Daoist Fangjing guessed she must be a disciple of a famous cultivation group who came out to gain experience. The two of them stared at the boundless glacier and snow, then said together, "Then we'll take our leave first." At this point, they smiled at each other, then Mo Tiange cupped her hands. "That being the case, fellow Daoist Fangjing, I'll take my leave now." Daoist Fangjing returned her greeting, then said, "I'll go straight south. Fellow Daoist Yi, Zhengfa sect isn't far from here, so you can go a bit further north." Mo Tiange nodded. Thank you. The two of them waved goodbye and no longer said anything. One of them went south while the other went north. Amidst the snowstorm, Emotienga muttered to herself for a moment before she rode the white silk handkerchief and flew north. Among the 7 great cultivation groups in the celestial pole, Xianxia sect was the only one that wasn't in Kunwo. It was located in the northernmost glacial area and specialized in accepting cultivators with water spiritual roots to practice ice spells. For some unknown reason, the residents of this area generally had water spiritual roots, so Xianxia sect dominated the north and was unexpectedly able to contend against several great cultivation groups in Kunwo. However, due to this special geographical location, Xianxia sect was both successful and failed here. The glaciers were bitter and cold, so there weren't many mortals in the north. Mortals were the foundation of cultivators, so Xianxia sect couldn't expand further and could only set up a branch in Kunwo. Nevertheless, the northernmost glacial area was the most advantageous for those who practiced ice spells, so their headquarters could only be located there. All these reasons led to a certain phenomenon. No one in the cultivation world in the entire celestial pole dared to look down on Xianxia sect, but no one was optimistic about its future because its advantages and weaknesses were tied together. It couldn't grow stronger, but it also couldn't be easily destroyed. Since she ended up in the northernmost glacial area by chance, Emotienga thought she might as well widen her horizons here. Since Xianxia sect was able to become one of the 7 great cultivation groups in the celestial pole with only one type of cultivation technique, it was clear that Xianxia sect must have its unique characteristics. It would be beneficial for her to understand more about it. In the current cultivation world, aside from devil cultivators, the so-called sword cultivators, talisman cultivators, martial arts cultivators, and medical cultivators were all Dao cultivators. The Dao was broad and profound. Aside from watching, listening, thinking, discussing, and gaining experience, there was no other way to improve it. Therefore, a person could only enter closed-door meditation after their mental state reached a certain level, but they couldn't delude themselves into closed-door meditation to cultivate from the aura-refining realm all the way to the nascent soul realm. Cultivation was never just cultivation. The further north she flew, the greater the pressure of the cold wind. After flying for half a day, Emotienga actually felt her whole body stiffen. She was bewildered. She was already in the peak of the middle stage of the foundation-building realm, but she still couldn't withstand this cold wind. What about the low-level cultivators of Xianxia sect? Could it be that they didn't leave the sect? Or was it because she didn't know the secret? Unable to figure out the reason, Emotienga shook her head. She then found a crack between the icebergs and hid inside. This was a narrow crack between 2 icebergs. Fortunately, she was small, so she could squeeze in. Finally, the cold wind stopped, and Emotienga felt her body warm up. The ice here and the low temperature didn't affect her at all. Only the cold wind blew on her body like a cultivator's spell. Emotienga felt a bit regretful that she didn't ask Daoist Fangjing about this. Since he'd been here before, he should know what was going on with this cold wind. She sat cross-legged in the crack between the icebergs and operated her spiritual aura. After one small circulation, Emotienga already felt her whole body warm. Maybe I have to keep operating my spiritual aura? With that thought in mind, she stood up, preparing to continue flying. However, it was only when she stood up that she realized her boots were wet. Before she left, she deliberately made 2 sets of robes that weren't Xianxia School's uniform, but they were made of the same raw materials. After being calcined with innate true fire, they could be considered spirit tools, so they weren't affected by this cold wind at all. However, she didn't remember to make the boots. It was only after she left that she realized the boots had Xianxia School's Taiji auspicious cloud symbol on them. Because of that, when she was in Yi Clan, she casually asked for a pair of boots and wore them. Just as she was about to take out the new boots and put them on, Emotienga paused. Didn't I just get a pair of boots from Ziwei's Immortal's cave? After thinking for a moment, she took out the cloud-treading boots and put them on. The moment she put on the cloud-treading boots, Emotienga felt as if the boots were measuring the size of her feet. Soon after, the boots automatically changed and tightly fitted her feet. Soon after, a wisp of spiritual aura came out of the boots and concentrated on her feet. When she stepped on them with the new boots, she felt the soles of her feet flying. A thought flashed through her mind. Without using the white silk handkerchief, she soared into the air. In an instant she had already flown several hundred feet. Upon discovering this, Tienge was pleasantly surprised. She originally guessed these boots could increase her flying speed, but unexpectedly, they were actually a flying magic weapon. In this case, she wouldn't need to use the white silk handkerchief to fly in the future. Although the white silk handkerchief also had a flying function, Zhong Muling clearly said it was originally a defensive magic weapon. Its flying function was something he modified later, so it was slightly inferior to a flying magic weapon. Of course, that was only in his eyes as a deification cultivator. Compared to core formation cultivators and even nascent soul cultivators, the white silk handkerchief's flying speed couldn't be considered bad. As for these cloud-treading boots, they were a magic weapon for peak-stage nascent soul cultivators and were also a flying magic weapon. Presumably, they shouldn't be inferior to the white silk handkerchief. In the past, she had to use the white silk handkerchief to both fly and defend, so sometimes she would be flustered. With these boots, wouldn't it be more convenient for her to fight? With this thought in mind, Tienge's interest was piqued. She immediately urged the cloud-treading boots with all her strength and flew forward. At this moment, if someone was watching from below, they would see a white flight light flying in the sky. Although its momentum wasn't very strong, its speed was far faster than a foundation-building cultivator's. It was almost comparable to a core formation cultivator's. Chapter 171. As she flew through the wind and snow, she used her spiritual aura. Sure enough, she didn't feel cold anymore. Tienge thought to herself. In that case, the cultivators in the northernmost glacier had to use their spiritual aura all the time. From a certain point of view, didn't that mean they had more time to cultivate than ordinary cultivators? But that wasn't right. Aura-refining cultivators couldn't resist this cold wind. They must have some secret method. While she was thinking, her spread-out divine sense suddenly found traces of living beings. Tienge stopped, changed her direction, and flew northwest. Her divine sense locked on. Before long, she saw a group of people walking on the glacier. They were mortals. She frowned, waved her sleeves, and descended. The power emitted by a foundation-building cultivator shocked these mortals. When they saw her appearance, they all kowtowed and said, "Greetings, Master Immortal." "Greetings, Master Immortal." While these mortals were kowtowing, Tienge landed on the ice and said, "Who are you?" Among these mortals, the one kneeling in front was a bearded, middle-aged man. He raised his head and respectfully said, "So it's a fairy. We have eyes but failed to see. Please forgive us." His attitude was humble and humble. Tienge couldn't help but frown. "No need. Stand up and answer me." The man answered repeatedly. He then stood up and shouted at the people behind him, "Fairy, let us stand up. Stand up, stand up." These mortals stood up in twos and threes. Tienge noticed they were all young and strong men. There were also a few women who looked quite strong. "Fairy, we're from the seal tribe. This is the snow lotus we picked this time. Please examine it." As he spoke, he took out a jade box from his robe, opened it, and offered it to her with both hands. Tienge was stunned. This jade box was used by cultivators to collect spiritual plants. The snow lotus inside was a spiritual plant. What were they doing? "Did you mistake me for someone else?" Seeing that she didn't accept the jade box, the man looked at her carefully and suddenly understood. "Fairy, you came from the south?" Tienge looked at the man and frowned. "What do you mean?" The man said with a simple and honest smile, "Fairy is from the south. No wonder you don't know our northernmost customs. We are lotus pickers. When the immortal masters of the extreme north meet us lotus pickers, they will use spirit stones to exchange for snow lotuses, so that's how it is." This northernmost land was indeed very different from Kunwu. Tienge remembered what she wanted to ask. "You're mortals, how can you withstand the cold wind and snow?" This snowstorm is not normal. Ah, Fairy doesn't know? The man was surprised. Could it be that Fairy didn't come from Darren City? Then city? Tienga paused for a moment. She recalled the Jade Slip Yi clan gave her saying that regardless of whether one was a cultivator or a mortal, they would have to pass through Dawn City on their way to the northernmost land. Dawn City was the last big city on the way to the northernmost land in the heartland. If one wanted to get supplies or inquire about information, it would be very convenient, so Dawn City became the only way. If Fairy came from Dawn City, someone should have already told you about our northernmost land when you were getting supplies. Tienga said faintly, I came directly from the heartland to the northernmost land, so I didn't pass through Dawn City. Why don't you tell me about it? If you tell me in detail, I'll naturally reward you. Upon hearing her last sentence, the man smiled so widely that his eyes bloomed. He said repeatedly, Yes, yes. This lowly one will tell Fairy. As it turned out, the mortals in the northernmost land were different from those in the heartland and Kunwu. They didn't have a country, nor did they have a city, they were only divided into tribes. Each tribe was different in size. The largest tribe had tens of thousands of people, while the small ones only had a few dozen people. On the snowfields stretching thousands of miles in the northernmost land, there were several thousand tribes of various sizes. Their combined population was enough to be mentioned in the same breath as that of the big country in the heartland. However, these tribes weren't all friendly. Some of them married each other, while some of them hated each other. Before Xianxia sect was established, each of these tribes had their own cultivators, and they were called shamans. Shamans were often the leaders of tribes. If a tribe didn't have a shaman, it had to pay tribute to a tribe that had one. Shamans were the gods of the tribes in the northernmost land. These shamans, on the other hand, were actually just some low-level cultivators. Even the shamans of big tribes were only in the foundation-building realm. This was what Tienga deduced from the man's words. When the cultivators from Kunwu established Xianxia sect in the northernmost land, they subdued the shamans of big tribes and ordered all the shamans in the tribes to belong to Xianxia sect. In return, Xianxia sect would protect their tribes. In the beginning, the tribes in the northernmost land weren't convinced because they thought Xianxia sect had broken their tradition. However, as Xianxia sect used a series of methods, the tribes discovered that their lives became much better with Xianxia sect's protection. Gradually, they were convinced, and Xianxia sect became their new god. Several thousand years passed, and Xianxia sect took root firmly in the northernmost land. Because of this, the tribes there abandoned their traditions. They no longer called themselves shamans. Instead, they followed the way people in the Middle Earth and Kunwu called them immortals or fairies. Their former shamans wore Daoist robes and combed their hair into Daoist buns. Even their unique language was no longer their main language. Instead, they spoke like the people in the Middle Earth and Kunwu. Even their way of life was different from how it was several thousand years ago. The former tribes made a living by hunting fish and wild beasts under the glaciers. It was a very difficult life, and it was easy for them to lose their lives. After Xianxia sect appeared, all the tribes under their protection would receive a kind of spirit tool that could help them hunt beasts. However, this kind of spirit tool required spirit stones to activate, so they organized lotus-picking teams. They would go to the boundless snowfield to pick snow lotuses and exchange them for spirit stones with cultivators. Although picking snow lotuses was also very difficult, it was much less dangerous than hunting beasts. Because of Xianxia sect's formidable strength, the mortals of the northernmost land respected cultivators very much. Whenever cultivators passed by, they would warmly welcome them and point them in the right direction. If they were lucky, they could even get a few spirit stones as a reward. The group of people Tienga ran into was a lotus-picking team from a nearby tribe called Seal. They thought she was a cultivator from Xianxia sect, so they offered snow lotuses to her. Tienga nodded then asked, "The cold wind here is also very difficult for cultivators to resist. You're mortals, so why aren't you affected?" The man in the lead explained, "Fairy, you might not know this, but this is the effect of snow lotuses. Every year, we northernmost people use soup made from snow lotuses to wash our bodies. This way, we won't have to worry about the cold wind. Tiange stared at the snow lotuses in the jade box. Her interest was piqued. Although these spiritual plants aren't old, they're full of spiritual aura. The cultivators here are actually willing to let mortals like you use them? Fairy, there are a lot of ordinary snow lotuses in our northernmost land, so they're not that precious. However, the snow lotuses they offer to the Master's Immortals are all rare species and not easy to find. Oh, I see, Fairy. Once the man finished speaking, he raised his head and looked at Tiange eagerly. I wonder if you're interested in this snow lotus? Tiange was bewildered. Aren't you going to offer it to Xianxia sect cultivators? Can you also give it to outsiders? The man smiled respectfully and said, Fairy, you might not know this, but Xianxia sect doesn't restrict us from offering snow lotuses. If cultivators from the south come, we can also exchange them for spirit stones. I heard from a master immortal in my tribe that this snow lotus can be concocted into a kind of medicinal pill that's only effective for people who practice water magic, so cultivators from the south won't come to steal it. At most, they'll exchange some for their own use. This won't affect Xianxia sect at all. No wonder Xianxia sect dominated this area. Their unique spiritual roots and magic were the foundation of their establishment. They not only deterred mortals but also bestowed kindness upon them. They didn't treat them harshly, so after a long time, mortals would naturally sincerely revere them as gods. With this thought in mind, Tiange reached out to take the snow lotus from the jade box. After studying it for a while, she asked, How many spirit stones do you want to exchange this snow lotus for? Upon hearing her question, the man hastily bowed. Master Immortal, however much you're willing to give, it's a reward for us. Tiange couldn't help but smile when she heard that. Everyone loved to be respectful and flatter, so even if his words weren't sincere, they still made her feel comfortable. Besides, this man looked sincere, so he didn't seem fake. Xianxia sect was really amazing in this northernmost area. They could actually make these mortals sincerely respect and love cultivators. Tiange took out a handful of spirit stones from her Qianquan bag and gave them to the man. Consider this extra your reward for answering my question. This snow lotus was about a dozen years old, so it wasn't considered precious to cultivators. She roughly estimated the price of spiritual plants in Kunwu and estimated it to be worth about 10 spirit stones. The man looked at the dozen or so colorful spirit stones and was pleasantly surprised. He smiled so widely that his eyes disappeared. He nodded repeatedly and said, Thank you, Fairy, for your reward. As he spoke, the group of about a dozen people once again knelt down and kowtowed. Tiange waved her sleeves, sending out a spiritual aura to support them. She couldn't stand these people kneeling at the drop of a hat. You said this snow lotus can withstand the cold wind by boiling it into soup and washing your body? Are the cultivators of Xianxia sect also like this? After receiving her spirit stones, the man's attitude became even more respectful. He bowed and answered, We mortals are like this. However, according to the Master Immortal of my tribe, Xianxia sect has another method suitable for cultivators. Not only can it withstand the cold wind, but it can also increase spiritual aura. Oh! Tiange was a bit tempted. Is this method allowed to be taught to outsiders? This lowly one doesn't know. The man then hastily added, If Fairy doesn't have any urgent matters to attend to, you can come to our tribe as a guest. Our Master Immortal happened to come back a few days ago. Tiange thought about it. In any case, she didn't have any specific purpose, so it wouldn't matter if she went to this tribe to take a look. It would be even better if she could learn more about the northernmost area from their Master Immortal. With that thought in mind, she nodded with a smile. That being the case, I'll be bothering you. Upon hearing her agreeing, the man was pleasantly surprised. He hastily returned her greeting respectfully. We don't dare. It's our honor to have Fairy as a guest in our tribe. Fairy, please. Tiange looked at the snowstorm and said, I'll send you on your way. As she spoke, she raised her hand and summoned the white silk handkerchief. She then cast an art and the white silk handkerchief instantly expanded. With a flick of her sleeve, spiritual aura gushed out, lifting more than 10 mortals up. Seemingly seeing such a method for the first time, the man in the lead was both surprised and delighted. Standing on the white silk handkerchief, he said while trembling, "Fairy, this, what? You don't want to?" The man hastily shook his head. "Of course not. With Fairy taking us back, we'll be much safer. Thank you, Fairy." As he spoke, he was about to kneel again. Xianxia felt helpless. These people were too respectful to cultivators. They knelt at every turn. She raised her hand to stop them. "Stand properly. You lead the way." "Fairy, our tribe is in this direction." The seal tribe wasn't far away. Since she was carrying mortals, Xianxia didn't dare to fly too fast. Nevertheless, in just a short while, they could already see the densely packed snow-white roofs below them. As it turned out, in this northernmost area, materials were scarce except for ice, so these mortals used ice to build their houses. The temperature in this northernmost area was extremely low. Even a drop of water would turn into ice, so the houses built from ice were airtight. Not only were they not cold, but they were also very warm. Xianxia learned all of this from the man in the lead. The man in the lead was the chieftain of the seal tribe, Haibo. The northernmost people originally didn't have surnames, but after Xianxia sect was established, they also started to use surnames. Everyone in the seal tribe had the surname Hai. Looking down from above, the large group of ice houses were sparkling and translucent. Amidst the swirling snow, they looked very beautiful. "Fairy, over there." Haibo pointed the way, and Xianxia landed on the open space in the middle of the group of ice houses. There were originally many people on the open space, and each of them was busy with their own business. The women were sewing and drying clothes, while the men were repairing all kinds of utensils and dealing with the carcasses of various animals. Upon seeing them coming down from the sky, everyone gathered around them. Once they landed on the open space and put away the white silk handkerchief, Xianxia discovered that a group of people was kneeling around her. Feeling helpless, she turned to Haibo and said, "I don't like this. Tell them to stop kneeling." Haibo nodded, then stepped forward and said loudly, "Everyone, get up. This fairy doesn't like people kneeling. Go do what you're supposed to do." Upon hearing the chieftain's words, these people finally stood up one after another. Some went back to work, while others came to talk to their relatives. Haibo turned around and said to Xianxia, "Fairy, this way please. Our master Immortal is here." Xianxia nodded, then followed Haibo to the tallest ice house. As they walked, Haibo introduced the place to her. "Our tribe's master Immortal is an official disciple of Xianxia sect. If you have any questions, he'll definitely know. Come, Fairy, please." He lifted the animal skin curtain in front of the ice house and politely invited Xianxia to enter. Xianxia smiled and took the lead. When she was above the tribe, she already sensed a foundation-building cultivator's aura. Unexpectedly, there was actually a foundation-building cultivator in this tribe that only had several hundred people at most. Inside was a small hall. The furnishings weren't any different from those in the Heartland and Kunwu. The only difference was the materials. Most of the furniture was made of ice, the curtains were made of animal skin, and there were also some teacups and the like, all of which were carved from wood. Once they entered the small hall, Haibo stood in front of a curtain and shouted, "Master Immortal, Haibo requests an audience." Then he respectfully stood in front of the curtain. After a while, a voice came from inside. "What's the matter?" Haibo respectfully reported, "A fairy requests an audience." Once Haibo finished speaking, Xianxia slightly released the momentum of a foundation-building cultivator. Sure enough, a sound was immediately heard from inside. Soon after, someone lifted the curtain and came out. It was a young man. He was tall and thin, had a thin face, and was wearing Xianxia sect's Daoist robe. Xianxia raised her hand. Just as she was about to salute him, she was startled. "It's you." Chapter 172. This person was Jiang Shanghong, the person she saw on Mount Yunwu more than 10 years ago. The Jiang Shanghong in front of her was a lot different from 10 years ago. When Emo first entered Yunwu sect, the Jiang Shanghong she saw was young and had a decent face, but his whole body was cold and his eyes were full of disdain, making people not want to get close to him. But the current Jiang Shanghong looked a bit younger than before. He wasn't even 50 years old yet, which was quite young for a foundation-building cultivator. His entire person was much thinner than before, but the uncomfortable gloomy coldness of his body had turned into indifference. His brows had also become gentle, and there was no disdain to hurt others, only a faint indifference. After Emo was saved by Jiang Shanghong, the two of them fled separately. Emo attracted the attention of the pursuers, so no one knew Jiang Shanghong was involved and he disappeared smoothly. Later, although Emo was saved by Qin Shi, she lost second uncle and went to Xianxia school. Separated by thousands of miles, she didn't have time to inquire about Jiang Shanghong. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years had passed. Senior martial brother Jiang? Jiang Shanghong was even more shocked when he saw her expression. When he heard her voice, he regained his composure and said to the curious Haibo, "This is my friend. Quickly serve the snow lotus tea." Haibo promptly answered, "Yes, yes. Please wait a moment, the tea will be served soon." After Haibo left, Jiang Shanghong's gaze finally fell on Emo. After sizing her up, the astonishment on his face slowly faded and he finally smiled. "Junior martial brother Yi, long time no see." His smile made Emo sigh inwardly. How could Jiang Shanghong smile in the past? It seemed that leaving Yunwu sect for more than 10 years had changed him a lot. It has indeed been a long time. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years have passed. I didn't expect we'd meet again here. Jiang Shanghong nodded with a smile. "Junior martial brother Yi, please sit." "Oh, should I change my name now?" Emo sat down on the guest seat and said with a smile, "What's the difference? I'm still using the name Yi Shaotian when I'm outside, so senior martial brother Jiang can still call me that." After a pause, she asked with a smile, "Senior martial brother Jiang, are you using your original name now?" Jiang Shanghong sat down on the seat of honor and shook his head. "My current name is Jiang Shuihan." Upon hearing that he really did change his name, Emo sighed and nodded. Jiang Shanghong probably changed his name because he had no other choice. When he left Jiang clan, he broke off all relations with Jiang clan. Before he left, he even killed the beloved junior of Jiang clan's core formation cultivator. He wasn't like Emo who entered Xianxia school and had protection. If he didn't change his name, it would be very easy for others to find him. It's been so many years. Is senior brother Jiang doing well? Why did you become a master immortal of this northernmost tribe and even entered Zhengfa sect? I'm doing pretty well. Jiang Shanghong said faintly, "After I left Mount Yunwu, I decided to leave Kunwu and look for other spirit veins to cultivate. However, there are too few spirit veins in the secular world. In the end, after thinking about it for a long time, I came to the northernmost area. Zhengfa sect is the most powerful sect in the northernmost area, and it also cultivates water magic, which suits me very well. Kunwu is also far away from here, so presumably, no matter how hard Jiang clan tries, they won't be able to find me in the northernmost area." That is true. In the past, senior brother Jiang also cultivated water magic, so entering Zhengfa sect also complemented each other. Emo couldn't help but nod. Now that she thought about it carefully, it was very normal for Jiang Shanghong to come to the northernmost area. He mainly cultivated water magic, so Zhengfa sect's cultivation technique was very suitable for him. Furthermore, it was far from Kunwu, so it was a good place to hide. Jiang Shanghong smiled. It was actually a coincidence that I was able to smoothly enter Zhengfa sect. As long as a mortal in the northernmost area has spiritual roots, Zhengfa sect will accept them no matter what kind of spiritual roots they have. However, they're very strict with us cultivators who come from the south. My spiritual roots are too poor, so it was originally very difficult for me to be accepted by them. Oh? Could it be that senior brother Jiang encountered some kind of fated chance? It was also a coincidence. As soon as I arrived here, I happened to run into the people of this tribe. Their master immortal had just passed away, so they were faced with the predicament of being incorporated by another tribe. Thus, they begged me to become their master immortal. I thought about it, and since I didn't have anywhere else to go, I agreed. Later, Xianxia sect changed its name and abandoned the original Xianxia school. To celebrate the change, foreign cultivators like me, who also became a master immortal of a tribe, were allowed to join as an exception. I see. That being the case, Jiang Shanghong had it much harder than she had in the past 17 years. After painstakingly escaping from Yunwu sect, leaving Kunwu and fleeing to the northernmost area, he must have suffered a lot in the beginning, but fortunately he finally had some results. Jiang Shanghong stared at her and asked, "Junior martial brother Yi, judging from your appearance, you've been living well these past few years. I originally thought it would be good if you could build your foundation, but when I saw you again, your cultivation level was actually much higher than mine. You must have had some kind of fated chance, right?" His own cultivation level was still in the early stage of the foundation building realm. Even if he wanted to advance to the middle stage of the foundation building realm, it wouldn't be something that could be done in a short period of time. Mo Tiange, on the other hand, was already in the peak of the middle stage of the foundation building realm and could advance to the late stage at any time. Mo Tiange also smiled. Jiang Shanghong's current temperament was quite agreeable to her. He spoke bluntly and wasn't as gloomy as before. "It's not bad, I was just lucky. I'm afraid luck alone isn't enough. Junior martial brother Yi, you don't have to be so modest." Jiang Shanghong paused for a moment, then continued, "Junior martial brother Yi, I'll tell you the truth. When we parted that year, I thought you'd most likely be unable to escape the calamity. I never expected that you... How did you escape that time?" This... Mo Tiange muttered to herself for a moment, but in the end, she told him the truth. "It was almost like that. If senior martial brother Qin hadn't come to save me, I would have died." "Senior martial brother Qin?" Jiang Shanghong thought for a moment, then said with astonishment, "Are you talking about junior martial brother Qin, she who lived with us?" Mo Tiange nodded. "After we parted that day, second uncle and I escaped from Mount Yunwu, but we were quickly overtaken by them. Because of that, second uncle died." Mo Tiange's expression became gloomy when she mentioned this matter. Jiang Shanghong looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, I made you remember something sad." "It's nothing." Judging from Jiang Shanghong's current appearance, he was indeed completely different from before. How could he have apologized for this matter in the past? She went on to say, "Before second uncle died, he told me to ask someone for help. That person was a famous core formation cultivator in West Kunwu. Back then, he owed my father a favor, so he left a divine sense sound-transmitting talisman behind. After I crushed the talisman, senior martial brother Qin appeared." What? Jiang Shanghong was shocked. He thought for a moment, then asked, "Junior martial brother Qin, could it be that you already have a master?" Mo Tiange smiled and nodded. She knew Jiang Shanghong misunderstood, but she didn't intend to explain. In fact, she also thought the same as Jiang Shanghong back then. Qin, she also made her think the same. After all, how could an ordinary aura refining cultivator know that he lived with a core formation cultivator for several years? Jiang Shanghong thought for a moment, then asked, "Could it be that junior martial brother Qin's master is much more famous than Yunwu Sex, so he could, correct?" Mo Tiange said faintly, "How could those people from Yunwu sect dare to offend the disciple of Lord Daoist Jinghe from Xianxia school in West Kunwu?" "What?" Jiang Shanghong blurted out and stood up all of a sudden. Right at that moment, someone called from outside, "Master Immortal, the Snow Lotus tea is here." Jiang Shanghong calmed himself down, then sat down. His tone regained its calmness. "Come in." A woman lifted the curtain, then gracefully walked in with a tray. She poured each of them a cup of tea and cautiously looked between them as if she was trying to guess their relationship. Finally, she saluted them, then left. The women of this northernmost area were also different from the women of Kunwu in the heartland. Their skin was fair and their facial features were relatively deep. Their statures weren't tall, but they were sturdy. The women Mo Tienga saw on the way to this tribe were all like this, but this woman was obviously a bit more beautiful. Her figure was much more graceful, and she didn't look like someone from the northernmost area. Jiang Shanghong, who noticed her gaze, explained, ever since Zhengfa sect established itself in the northernmost area, the mortals it brought with it had many marriages with the northernmost tribes. Now, some people in the tribe have bloodlines from the Heartland and Kunwu. He then pointed at the snow lotus tea on the table. Junior Marshal Brother Yi, have you ever drunk this snow lotus tea in Dawn City? Back then, I was in a hurry to come to the northernmost area, so I didn't drink this snow lotus tea and suffered a lot. Fortunately, I met people from the Seal tribe. Mo Tienga shook her head and said with a smile, I didn't either. Fortunately, I've built my foundation now. Otherwise, I would have also suffered a lot. Jiang Shanghong smiled and the two of them sipped their tea. This snow lotus tea was the same as the one in the south. It was dried and brewed, but instead of tea leaves, it was made from snow lotus petals. After taking a sip, Mo Tienga suddenly felt a stream of heat flowing from her abdomen to her limbs and bones. She felt extremely warm. It seemed that not only could she wash herself with snow lotus tea, but drinking snow lotus tea could also protect her from the cold wind of the northernmost area. Jiang Shanghong put down the teacup, looked at her and continued with the previous topic. Junior Marshal Brother Yi, you said Junior Marshal Brother Qin is the disciple of a nascent soul cultivator at Xianxia School? There was nothing she couldn't say. So you're also at Xianxia School now? Mo Tienga smiled faintly and said, I was lucky. When I went to Xianxia School, I won Lord Daoist Jinghe's favor and he accepted me as his registered disciple. After I built my foundation, I became his official disciple. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shanghong's gaze towards her was different from before. When he saw that Mo Tienga's cultivation level had already reached the peak of the middle stage of the foundation building realm and she looked confident, he knew she was doing very well. However, he didn't know she was doing so well. An official disciple of a nascent soul cultivator. He thought about himself. After he built his foundation, his cultivation speed wasn't inferior to that of elite disciples, so he thought he was lucky enough. When he occasionally thought about Junior Marshal Brother Yi from back then, he always thought she was most likely no longer in this world. Even if she was lucky enough to escape the calamity, she probably wouldn't be able to build her foundation. Unexpectedly, not only did she build her foundation, but she was also doing so well that it was beyond his expectations. In that case, it's no wonder Junior Marshal Brother Yi made realm breakthroughs so fast. Not only did you smoothly build your foundation, but you also reached the peak of the middle stage of the foundation building realm so quickly. Jiang Shanghong said with a sigh, everyone has their own fortune, there's no point in being envious. Senior Marshal Brother Jiang, you're already an official disciple of Zhengfa sect now, why do you need to be envious? With Senior Marshal Brother Jiang's temperament, presumably, you also have hope for the Great Tao. Jiang Shanghong smiled bitterly. The Great Tao? That's too far. Back then, I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I thought those two ancestors deliberately suppressed me so that Jiang Chengxian could stand up for me. In fact, even if they didn't suppress me, so what? Maybe I could build my foundation very smoothly, but after that, my future would be unpredictable. Mo Tienga was silent. If she hadn't obtained the art of the origin and turned from a waste spiritual root of 5 elements into a heaven-gifted genius in one fell swoop, her cultivation path would probably be the same. When she was in the aura refining realm, she always thought that by relying on her own efforts, even if the path to immortality was difficult, she could still reach the other side. However, after she built her foundation, she discovered that her previous thoughts were simply overestimating the immensity of heaven and earth. Aptitude, cultivation technique, temperament, and luck. Not a single one could be lacking. At least Senior Marshal Brother Jiang built his foundation smoothly, didn't you? Jiang Shanghong sighed. I was able to build my foundation because I entered Zhengfa sect. Back then, although I obtained foundation refining pills and constitution enhancing pills, I tried them once and failed. Later, I went to the northernmost area and entered Zhengfa sect. I modified their high-grade ice element cultivation technique and won a minor competition in the sect. It was only after I obtained pointers from a core formation senior that I dared to enter closed-door meditation again. This time, I finally succeeded by a fluke. With Jiang Shanghong's aptitude of 4 spiritual roots, being able to build his foundation twice was indeed a fluke. In fact, wasn't she also lucky? Back then, when I built my foundation, I used no less than 4 foundation-building pills. If I hadn't received several foundation-building pills as a reward from Master, I don't know when I would have been able to build my foundation. Mo Tiange also sighed. She didn't know when she was in the aura-refining realm, but after building her foundation, she recalled the process of building her foundation. The two of them sighed, then glanced at each other and couldn't help but smile. Mo Tiange pondered for a moment, then chose a tactful way of saying, "Right, Senior Martial Brother Jiang, your temperament seems to be different from before." Jiang Shanghong laughed. "I know what you mean. You want to say that I'm not as annoying as before, right?" Mo Tiange also smiled and didn't deny it. Jiang Shanghong said, "It was only after I left the Jiang clan and saw more things that I realized the world was actually this big. When I was in the Jiang clan, in order to cultivate quickly, I kept using secret techniques, which damaged my body and caused my temperament to become very strange. When I arrived at Zhengfa sect, I gave up my original cultivation technique and switched to Zhengfa sect's high-grade ice element cultivation technique, so I was naturally different from before." "I see. No wonder his temperament was different. His previous secret techniques tended to be cold and gloomy, while his current high-grade ice element cultivation technique tended to be cold. Moreover, without the shackles of Jiang clan, he was naturally more cheerful. Besides, here, everyone in the tribe respects me, and Zhengfa sect also doesn't bully me. Everything goes smoothly, so I naturally won't be resentful of the world." Mo Tiange thought about it and agreed. The environment affected one's temperament. When she was in Yunwu sect, she was cautious and had a heavy heart. She always greeted people with a smile and didn't dare to offend them in the slightest. When she arrived at Xianxia school, she had a cultivation level, identity, and status, so her personality became more flamboyant and she also learned to show her power to others. Junior Martial Brother Ye's also different from before. Jiang Shanghong sized her up again, then said with a smile, "In the past, no matter how I looked at you, Junior Martial Brother Yi was still a child, but now, you can really be considered a fairy." Was this a compliment to her appearance? Mo Tiange felt a bit strange. Even though she changed back to her female clothes, she always wore a loose Daoist robe with big sleeves, and she only wore her hair in a Daoist bun. She didn't even use the jewelry Qin she gave her. When she thought of this name, she was stunned. They hadn't seen each other for 10 years, so she didn't know how his closed-door meditation was going. Master said he was too thoughtful and most likely couldn't form his nascent soul, but he was very persistent. However, she clearly knew he wasn't an impatient person when it came to cultivation, so what made him so anxious to form his nascent soul? Junior Martial Brother Yi, Junior Martial Brother Yi. Seeing Jiang Shanghong's curious expression, Mo Tiange realized she was distracted just now. She felt annoyed and said, "I'm sorry, Senior Martial Brother Jiang." Jiang Shanghong looked at her inquisitively, but in the end he shook his head and didn't ask anything. Instead, he talked about another matter. "Right? You said Junior Martial Brother Qin is Lord Daoist Jinghe's disciple. Are you his martial brother now?" Since he's a disciple of a big sect like Xianxia school and a nascent soul cultivator's disciple, why did he go to Yunwu sect? And he stayed there for 3 years. She also didn't know the reason. Besides, this was Qianxi's private matter, so it wasn't appropriate for her to say it. Seeing her embarrassed expression, Jiang Shanghong said, "I was just asking casually. If it's not convenient, you don't have to say it." Mo Tiange sighed with relief and explained with a smile, "This is Senior Martial Brother Qin's private matter. It's not convenient for me to say it." I was too abrupt. Jiang Shanghong put down this question and asked again, "How is Junior Martial Brother Qin now?" "Very good." She swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. senior martial brother Qin advanced even faster than me. Really? Jiang Shanghong was surprised. He thought for a moment and said, back then he was only an aura-refining disciple, but he was already the disciple of a nascent soul cultivator. Could it be that his aptitude is actually very outstanding? As he spoke, he stared at Imotienga with a somewhat strange expression. What he was thinking was that he knew what aptitude this junior martial brother Yi had, but he was unexpectedly accepted as a disciple by a nascent soul cultivator. Could it be because of that junior martial brother Qin? You can say that. Imotienga said faintly, senior martial brother Qin is my master's blood-related descendant, and his aptitude is outstanding. Presumably, it's not impossible for him to advance to the nascent soul realm. Nascent soul? Upon hearing this, Jiang Shanghong couldn't help but say, junior martial brother Qin is only in the foundation building realm now, right? He's a genius with a single spiritual root, but advancing to the nascent soul realm isn't a certainty. However, he only saw Imotienga smiling slightly as if she didn't care, so he swallowed the rest of his words and said, back then, there were 5 people in our family. Junior martial brother Su died, and you and junior martial brother Qin left. The only one left in Yunwu sect was senior martial brother Lu. I wonder how proud he is now. When Louis Dao was mentioned, Jiang Shanghong sneered, seemingly disdainful. Imotienga frowned slightly. She asked in confusion, senior martial brother Jiang, back then, you and senior martial brother Lu didn't have any conflicts, right? Of course not. Then why did you? Jiang Shanghong sneered again. I originally thought among cultivators, he was one of those people who valued friendship. Who would have thought I'd see a secret of his? A secret? Imotienga was stunned. Correct. Jiang Shanghong said coldly, do you know how junior martial brother Su died? It was during the foundation building pills test. Imotienga paused. Since Jiang Shanghong said that, could it be that Su Jingji's death was related to Louis Dao? Upon seeing her expression, Jiang Shanghong nodded indifferently. You should have guessed what I mean. Back then, in that forest, I happened to see them. I saw them being besieged with my own eyes. When they were in danger, senior martial brother Lu, in order to buy himself time to escape, didn't warn junior martial brother Su and took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him to slip away. However, junior martial brother Su was surrounded by Xianxia sect's cultivators. Without a doubt, he died. What? Imotienga's face paled. She was about to question why Jiang Shanghong didn't make a move even though he saw them, but on second thought, regardless of Jiang Shanghong's temperament back then, since he was bound to lose, he naturally wouldn't throw his life away. However, not making a move was one thing, and abandoning Su Jingji like a sacrificial pawn was another. The last time she saw Louis Dao, he was so angry about Su Jingji's death. Could it be that he had a guilty conscience? Because he did such a thing, he hated the person who made him do it even more. Imotienga said slowly, senior martial brother Lu is also in the foundation building realm now. I met him once. He's now a core formation cultivator's disciple of Yunwu sect. Really? Jiang Shanghong sneered with an indifferent expression. I've been away from Yunwu sect for so long, and I don't plan to go back in the future. Whatever happens to him has nothing to do with me. Imotienga was speechless. She also thought the same way. It was something that happened more than 10 years ago. So what if Louis Dao wronged Su Jingji? In any case, she wouldn't have anything to do with him in the future. However, this matter really made her sigh with emotion. Sure enough, one might know a person's face but not his heart. Chapter 173. Jiang Shanghong asked, Junior martial brother Yi, since you're a disciple of a famous school now, why did you come to such a difficult place like the northernmost area? I won't hide it from senior martial brother Jiang. I left the mountain to travel. Zhengfa sect and Xianxia school are both Dao schools, so I came to the northernmost area to take a look. Her words were half true. There was nothing to hide about traveling, but it wasn't convenient to talk about fated chances like entering Ziwei's Immortal's cave. Jiang Shanghang naturally didn't know what she was concealing, so he just nodded. This was very normal. Before disciples of big cultivation groups made realm breakthroughs, most of them had to go out to gain experience to avoid failure when their mental state wasn't strong enough. Mo Tiange was now in the peak of the middle stage of the foundation building realm, so according to the rules, she had to go out to gain experience so she could advance to the late stage of the foundation building realm. Where's senior martial brother Jiang? Why aren't you in Zhengfa sect? Jiang Shanghang smiled but didn't answer immediately. A hint of hesitation flashed in his eyes as he said slowly, I won't hide it from you. With my aptitude, it'll be very difficult for my cultivation to advance after building my foundation, so I'm not often in the school. I often go out to find spiritual plants to concoct medicinal pills. Otherwise, with my aptitude, it'll be very difficult. He paused, then continued, This time, I left the school with this in mind. Don't be fooled by the boundless snowfield in this northernmost area. In fact, there are many good things there. It'll just depend on whether other people can find them or not. Looking at the mysterious smile on Jiang Shanghang's face, Mo Tiange couldn't help but ask, Does senior martial brother Jiang know? Jiang Shanghang was still smiling. If junior martial brother Yi is interested, we can talk about it in detail later. Since junior martial brother Yi came to the northernmost area, I should do my best as a host and entertain you well. Seeing that Jiang Shanghang changed the topic, Mo Tiange knew he still wanted to talk about it, so she didn't ask. She nodded and said, Thank you, senior martial brother Jiang. I'm unfamiliar with this northernmost area, so senior martial brother Jiang's hospitality couldn't be better. Jiang Shanghang laughed then said, Junior martial brother Yi, you're also very tired. Why don't you take a rest first? After you've rested enough, we can discuss some cultivation matters, or we can show you the scenery of the northernmost area. I'll have to trouble senior martial brother Jiang. Jiang Shanghang nodded with a smile, then raised his voice and shouted, Guards! After a while, the woman who brought the tea lifted the curtain and entered the room. She bowed and said, Immortal Master, what are your orders? Jiang Shanghang said, Clean up the guest room and properly entertain my friend. The woman glanced at Mo Tiange. After that, he walked towards Mo Tiange, bowed respectfully and made an inviting gesture. Fairy, please come with me. Mo Tiange once again cupped her hands towards Jiang Shanghang, then stood up and followed the woman out of the igloo. The mortal woman led her around a corner and entered an ice house not far away. This igloo was similar to the one Jiang Shanghang was in. It also had a small living room with a curtained door on the inside. It was not convenient to make doors in the ice houses in the extreme north. It seemed that the door curtains were made of animal skin. After bringing her here, the mortal woman respectfully bowed and said, Fairy, please rest here. If you need anything, just shout for me. Mo Tiange sized up the small igloo. After bowing once more, the mortal woman retreated. Mo Tiange rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She felt very tired, but she still carefully laid a defensive formation inside the house before entering the virtual sky world. It only took her 3 or 4 days to discover spiritual aura fluctuations in Jin country, trace them to Jiuling Mountains Fengxi Valley, enter Ziwei's Immortal's cave, and finally be transported to the northernmost glacier through the transporting formation. For a foundation-building cultivator, 3 or 4 days were nothing. However, after going through so many things, she already felt mentally exhausted. After entering the virtual sky world, she was finally safe. She didn't want to do anything, so she simply lay down and slept to her heart's content. When she woke up, she didn't know what time it was. Recalling her experience in Ziwei's Immortal's cave, she took out the 2 stone sculpture puppets, the Xuanji formation book, and the sunstone from her Qiankuan bag. In Ziwei's Immortal's cave, she obtained a total of 5 things. The cloud-treading boots were already on her body. She didn't recognize the unknown but it was certainly not an ordinary object, so she put it away first. The other 3 things were in front of her. These 2 stone sculpture puppets were both in the late stage of the foundation building realm. The control method Wanderer Ziwei left in her mind told her that these puppets could automatically absorb the spiritual aura around them. As long as there was spiritual aura, they could move forever. For the current her, having 2 late-stage foundation-building cultivators as helpers increased her strength by more than half. If she controlled them well, she wouldn't need to fear cultivators below the core formation realm. There was also the Sunstone. According to Daoist Fangjing, this thing could produce sun real fire and could be used to concoct medicinal pills. This time, for the sake of Jinji's safety, she left Xiaohuan next to Jinji's body. Foundation-building cultivators didn't have enough Dantian real fire, so they just lacked a suitable concocting fire. The most important thing was still the Xuanji formation book. She witnessed the power of the illusory formation with her own eyes in Ziwei's Immortal's cave. At that time, Wanderer Ziwei was lenient. If he wasn't lenient, how terrifying would that formation be? If that was the case, then it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that after learning this profound formation tome, she would be able to fight many enemies at once if she was prepared. Even if she were to face a high-grade cultivator, it wouldn't be as if she didn't have any life-saving measures. She immersed her divine sense into the jade slip. Just as she was about to start studying the Xuanji formation book, she heard a voice outside the virtual sky world. Fairy? Fairy? Mo Tiange pressed the space between her eyebrows and exited the virtual sky world. She then opened the formation and said, "Come in." Someone lifted the curtain outside and entered, stopping outside the inner door. Then, the voice of the woman from yesterday could be heard. "Fairy, our immortal master has invited you. Would it be convenient for Fairy to meet him?" As it turned out, Jiang Shanghong wanted to see her. Mo Tiange nodded. "I understand. Let's go now." The woman bowed again and led her back to the igloo from yesterday. As soon as she lifted the curtain, Jiang Shanghong was already waiting for her in the living room. When he saw her coming in, he stood up and greeted her. "Junior Marshal Brother Yi, I didn't disturb you, did I?" Mo Tiange smiled and said, "No, I'm just idle and have nothing to do." Jiang Shanghong replied with a smile, "That's good. Junior Marshal Brother Yi, yesterday I said I'd take you to see the scenery of the northernmost area. Since the weather is fine today, how about we go out for a walk?" "Sure." Since the master invited her, what reason did she have to refuse? The two of them left the igloo. Under the worship of the mortals in the tribe, they used their respective flying magic tools and flew into the air. The mortals below looked at them with envy and respect. Mo Tiange even saw a mother holding her child who was only 3 or 4 years old and earnestly teaching him, "Xiaofeng, do you see that? This is Master Immortal. Master Immortal said you have spiritual roots. Although it's not very good, you can still cultivate. Cultivate well, and when you grow up, you'll be able to fly like Master Immortal." Jiang Shanghong presumably also heard what she said, so he smiled and said, "That child only has 5 spiritual roots, but in the end he can still cultivate. Everyone's hopes are on him." Mo Tiange was a bit surprised. "There are only several hundred people in this tribe, right? Senior Marshal Brother Jiang, you said you came to this tribe because their Master Immortal passed away, and now they have a child with spiritual roots. Why does it seem like the probability of them having spiritual roots is very high?" "Correct. I was also very surprised when I first came here." Jiang Shanghong said, "The probability of the mortals in the northernmost area having spiritual roots is much higher than in the heartland. It's almost not inferior to the cultivation clans in Kunwo. A tribe with several hundred people can have one person with spiritual roots. However, their spiritual roots are generally poor, and cultivators with 3 spiritual roots or more rarely appear. Furthermore, their cultivators' lifespans are also shorter than Kunwo people's." "Oh, I guess it might be because of the special environment in the northernmost area. They need the protection of cultivators, so gradually, they have more cultivators than Kunwo. However, since there are advantages, there are naturally disadvantages. The price is that their cultivators' lifespans are shorter than Kunwo's." This made sense. In the Middle Ages era, there was a popular theory, the survival of the fittest, that only the fittest could survive. Facts also proved this principle. Those who were passed on adapted to the changes in the environment, and those who couldn't adapt died. One day, the weather was fine, just like Jiang Shanghong said. The sun appeared in the sky, giving them a bit of warmth when it shone on them. Under the sunlight, the glaciers reflected colorful light, dazzling and beautiful like a rainbow. Tiange flew in the sky and looked down. She only saw a boundless sparkling glacier with rainbows hanging between them, which was really intoxicating. Jiang Shanghong turned around and saw her expression. He said with a smile, "Junior martial brother, ye also thinks the scenery in the northernmost area is very beautiful?" Tiange nodded and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "The world is so big, and each place has its own beauty. Kunwu mountain range is majestic, and this northernmost glacier with its boundless whiteness is also very spectacular." Jiang Shanghong looked proud. "Only after coming to the northernmost area did I realize how vast the world is. Why should I be restricted to one mountain or one person? Jiang clan doesn't treat me well, so I'll just leave. The world is so big. Is there no place for me to go? In such a beautiful world, why should I be depressed because of Jiang clan that doesn't treat me well?" "You're right." Tiange couldn't help but clap her hands and praise him. "Senior martial brother Jiang is so broad-minded. If there's wine, you'll naturally drink it." "Ha!" Jiang Shanghong looked up and laughed. He took out a small bottle of wine from his robe and threw it to her. "You want wine? Isn't this it?" Tiange caught it. When she saw him taking out another bottle from his robe and opening it, looking very heroic, she also couldn't help but feel heroic. She also pulled out the cork and clinked her bottle with his. To senior martial brother Jiang for being reborn and being different from the past. Jiang Shanghong smiled. "To our escape, to our reunion after more than 10 years, to this vast world, and to our beautiful future." The two of them finished their wine in one gulp. Jiang Shanghong threw the bottle away and heaved a sigh of relief. "After being in the northernmost area for more than 10 years, I don't want to go back to Kunwu. This place is peaceful and happy. Although there are occasional disputes and daily life is hard, it's better than Kunwu's unpredictable people who scheme every day." "Is that so?" Tiange gazed into the distance. The boundless snowfield was empty, devoid of people, and only the cries of wild beasts could be heard. She also wanted this kind of peaceful and happy life. However, everything was good for her now in Xianxia school. She had a master, friends, and relatives. These things were more important to her. Chapter 174. After enjoying the scenery, Jiang Shanghong said, "Junior martial brother Yi, do you know that this northernmost glacier is actually an ocean?" Tiange was surprised. "An ocean?" Jiang Shanghong pointed to the north. "Over there, north of the glacier." Tiange looked as far as she could but couldn't see anything. Jiang Shanghong leaped up and stepped on his flying magic tool. "Let's go." Seeing that he was in high spirits, Tiange also leaped up. Jiang Shanghong had already seen her flying in the air without using a flying magic tool, so he couldn't help but ask, "Junior martial brother Yi, you can actually fly this fast?" Tiange smiled. "Of course not. Senior martial brother Jiang, look at my boots. These are flying magic tools." Jiang Shanghong naturally noticed that the boots on her feet were full of spiritual aura, but he wasn't sure. Now that he heard her words, he took a second look at them, feeling quite envious. As a flying magic tool, boots were much more convenient than ordinary flying magic tools, and they also saved magic power. However, flying magic tools in the shape of boots were very rare. Since Tiange said they were magic tools, Jiang Shanghong naturally felt envious. Although he was now a disciple of Zhengfa sect and was respected, he didn't have a master and was only an ordinary sect cultivator. He naturally didn't have any magic tools, but he had good magic tools. The two of them flew north. After flying for about half a day, they heard a rumbling sound. When they got closer, Tiange saw a vast ocean between the huge glaciers. "This is the ocean, yes." Jiang Shanghong floated in the air, looking at the ocean in the distance. "This is the northernmost ocean. It's so vast that I don't know where it leads to. There are demonic beasts everywhere, and there are countless rare treasures. It all depends on whether people have the ability to take them away. When Tiange heard what he said, she turned her head and stared at him thoughtfully. Jiang Shanghong turned back and smiled. It seems Junior Martial Brother Yi understands what I mean. Yes, in order to cultivate, I always go deep into the northernmost ocean to look for spiritual objects to exchange for cultivation needs. I told Junior Martial Brother Yi about this because I wanted to ask if you were interested. Tiange didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned around and looked at the boundless ocean in front of her. In the northernmost area, whether it was the boundless snowfield or the ocean in front of her, it was so vast and peaceful that people couldn't help but feel open-minded. She couldn't bear to let the matters of the cultivation world taint it. Senior Brother Jiang, are there any treasures here? What's the price? Upon hearing what she said, Jiang Shanghong seemed to heave a sigh of relief. He pointed at a place in the distance and said, Junior Martial Brother Yi, do you see that sharp horn? Tiange looked in the direction he was pointing. It was an iceberg about 1,000 feet tall. It looked like a sharp knife tearing a corner of the sea apart. Jiang Shanghong said, that iceberg has a name among the disciples of Zhengfa sect. How should I address you? Correct, that isn't an ordinary iceberg. It hasn't melted in 10,000 years, nor has it drifted away, firmly standing here. We call it the land of the hidden dragon. The land of hiding dragon. Tiange repeated with a puzzled expression. Dragons were the most powerful of the ancient divine beasts. The dragon clan was born with divine abilities, and they were once the race closest to gods. They could move clouds and summon rain, and they could swallow rivers and spit out oceans. Even a newborn dragon child had the same ability as a core formation cultivator. At the end of their cultivation, they would become winged dragons. They could fly in the sky, dive into the earth, and roam the universe. They were also the most carefree race. Senior Martial Brother Jiang, are you trying to say that dragons really exist? Jiang Shanghong shook his head. We don't know whether dragons really exist or not. However, this land of the hidden dragon has been passed down among Zhengfa sect disciples for thousands of years. I've also seen it. There's indeed a mysterious spiritual breath inside, but no one knows whether it's a dragon or not. Is it dangerous inside? Of course. Danger and opportunity coexist. A fervent glint flashed in Jiang Shanghong's eyes. He said in a low voice, we once had a senior who obtained a mysterious treasure inside and entered the core formation realm in one go. But among the disciples who entered, some came out with serious injuries, and some died. Seeing that Tiange didn't say anything, he anxiously asked, Junior Martial Brother Yi, are you not interested? Tiange smiled faintly and cast him a glance. Senior Martial Brother Jiang, what happened to your magnanimity just now? Jiang Shanghong was startled. A blushing expression appeared on his face, but he still said resolutely, I'm no longer trapped by my past. I can embark on the path of cultivation, so how can I give up? If I can go further, I naturally won't give up the opportunity to become an immortal. Tiange was silent. The great path to immortality was just these 4 words. How many magnanimous people couldn't see through it, let alone Jiang Shanghong? She took a deep breath and said, Senior Martial Brother Jiang, if there aren't enough benefits, I don't need to risk my life. What do you think? Jiang Shanghong was startled, but when he recalled her current identity, he finally reacted. He still smiled and said, this land of hiding dragon isn't the only place where ordinary disciples like us go to look for treasures. Even the elite disciples in the school also flock like ducks. Junior Martial Brother Yi, do you think there aren't enough benefits inside? Is that so? Zhengfa sect was also one of the 7 great cultivation groups in the Celestial Pole. Its power was only slightly smaller than Xianxia school and Gujian sect, so that meant, seeing that Tiange didn't seem very interested, Jiang Shanghong said, Junior Martial Brother Yi, don't underestimate the treasures inside. In Zhengfa sect, even nascent soul cultivators often go to the land of hiding dragon. Unless you're a disciple in the foundation building realm or above, you can't invite disciples who aren't from our school to enter. His words piqued Mo Tianga's interest. Nascent soul cultivators wouldn't be interested in ordinary treasures at all. Treasures that could make them frequently go there to look for treasures had to be natural treasures. Seeing that Mo Tianga finally looked a little interested, Jiang Shanghong hastily said, "Junior Marshal Brother Yi, if it was someone else, I wouldn't want to tell you, but you're my old friend. You're a reliable person and your strength isn't bad, so I felt at ease to ask you to be my companion. You don't need to worry too much, and it won't be dangerous to the point of death. Ever since I built my foundation, I've been there many times, and I always came back safely. As long as I'm careful and well prepared, my life usually won't be in danger." "Is that so?" Mo Tianga was slightly moved by what he said. "That being the case, why did Senior Marshal Brother Jiang insist on inviting me? Wouldn't it be better if we went together?" Jiang Shanghong smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I won't hide this from you. I'm just an ordinary foundation-building cultivator in Zhengfa sect. I don't have a close relationship with my fellow disciples, so I'll always be in a disadvantageous position if we enter the land of Hiding Dragon together. The few people I have a good relationship with are all mediocre. If Junior Marshal Brother Yi goes with me, with your help, I'll be able to have a say. So that's how it is." Mo Tianga mulled it over in her heart. What he said seemed to be true. Among big cultivation groups, there were also small groups, and Xianxia School was no exception. "Then, when do you plan to go, Senior Marshal Brother Jiang?" Upon hearing Mo Tianga's tone and knowing that she didn't refuse, Jiang Shanghong was delighted. He said, "I returned to the tribe this time to prepare for my trip to the land of Hiding Dragon. I've already made an appointment with my fellow disciples, so there's about 10 days left." Mo Tianga nodded. "Senior Marshal Brother Jiang, please tell me what I need to pay attention to." "In fact, it's nothing," Jiang Shanghong said. "Presumably, Junior Marshal Brother Yi has prepared medicinal pills, magic tools, and so on. There's only one thing. Entering the land of Hiding Dragon requires some secret medicines. Junior Marshal Brother doesn't need to worry about this. I'll prepare your share." "All right." Mo Tianga formally agreed. "That being the case, I'll go with Senior Marshal Brother Jiang." Jiang Shanghong beamed with joy. "Junior Marshal Brother Yi, I'll remember your kindness this time." Mo Tianga waved her hand. "If it's also beneficial to me, it's nothing." Once the two of them finished talking, Mo Tianga observed the surrounding scenery for a while before heading back with Jiang Shanghong. On the way, Jiang Shanghong gave her a brief introduction to the land of Hiding Dragon. As it turned out, the shamans of the northernmost lands already knew about the land of Hiding Dragon before Zhengfa sect arrived. Every year on the 15th day of the 8th month, they would gather there to offer sacrifices. Occasionally, some people obtained fated chances there and advanced to the foundation-building realm. But at that time, the land of Hiding Dragon didn't have this name yet. After Zhengfa sect was established, they learned about the land of Hiding Dragon and sent a nascent Soul Dao ancestor to explore it. In the end, they returned after a thrilling adventure, and the land of Hiding Dragon's name was passed down. The strange thing was that after several thousand years, countless Zhengfa sect disciples entered the land of Hiding Dragon and obtained a lot of treasures from there, but the number of treasures never decreased. Mo Tianga couldn't help but ask, "Senior Marshal Brother Jiang, how's that possible?" Jiang Shanghong answered, "Yes, that's what I thought in the beginning. But ever since I built my foundation, every time I entered the land of Hiding Dragon, I found that it was completely different from the last time." "Completely different?" Mo Tianga was puzzled. "What kind of scenery is it inside?" "Yes, it's completely different." Jiang Shanghong said, "The land of Hiding Dragon is located underwater, so it's a world in the sea. But every time we went inside, we found that the terrain was completely different from the last time. Even the demonic beasts and resources were completely different." "Are there any traces of formations inside?" Jiang Shanghong smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I can't see it. Even our nascent soul grandmasters can't see it." Mo Tianga looked pensive. "So you're saying it's an existence that surpasses our current realm?" "Yes." Jiang Shanghong nodded. "Every year on the 15th day of the 8th month, the tide rises. After that, the scenery inside will completely change. We can't stay inside when the tide rises. Of course. It's said that there were people who couldn't come out when the tide rose. After a day passed, they couldn't be found anymore. Jiang Shanghong paused for a moment and said with some hesitation, I once heard from a senior martial brother that the second layer of the land of hiding dragon changes every few years. The second layer? Mo Tiange frowned. Are there several layers inside? Correct. There are 3 layers inside. The first layer can be entered by U.S. foundation building and aura refining disciples, but the second and third layers can only be entered by cultivators in the core formation realm and above. Has this been a rule of your Zhengfa sect for several thousand years? Jiang Shanghong didn't hide anything. This was a rule set by the founder of our sect. Someone once violated it, and as a result, several foundation building cultivators entered the second layer and never came back. Mo Tiange was stunned. It's actually that serious? She pondered for a moment then asked, then what's in the second layer? Did the core formation seniors in your sect say anything? Jiang Shanghong shook his head and advised her, Junior Martial Brother Yi, our lives are more important. We'll just go to the first layer. If we're lucky on the first layer, we can also obtain natural treasures, so there's really no need to take risks on the second layer. Chapter 175. After returning to the Seal tribe and parting ways with Jiang Shanghong, Mo Tiange set up a defensive formation and entered the virtual sky world. In fact, she didn't really believe what Jiang Shanghong said. It wasn't very dangerous, but there were a lot of unique treasures. Such a good thing would definitely be considered a complete secret by the people in their sect. Not to mention inviting disciples from other sects, even disciples from their own sect wouldn't know about it. But she didn't think Jiang Shanghong had any bad intentions. Back in Yunwu sect, she only saved him once in passing, yet he was willing to take the risk to save her. Moreover, he really despised Lu Yidao's method of abandoning Su Jingxi. Presumably, although he was a selfish person, he wasn't a sinister person. If he didn't have good intentions for her, he wouldn't have acted like this. In short, Jiang Shanghong's character wasn't bad. He also saved her life once, which was the main reason why she agreed to go with him. Speaking of unique treasures and benefits, she didn't really desire them now. She already had too many things, so she really didn't need to be so greedy. With that thought in mind, Mo Tiange began to make preparations for the trip. Although Jiang Shanghong said she didn't need to prepare anything, Mo Tiange's personality was like this. She always planned before taking action. This way, there would be fewer accidents and she would have a higher chance of survival in a dangerous environment. She took out 2 stone sculpture puppets from her Qiankuan bag. With a single thought, the 2 puppets started to get busy. In the center of her virtual sky world, there were several small huts. Outside the huts was a dense bamboo forest. Surrounding the bamboo forest was a small stream, and on the other side of the stream was a large expanse of medicinal fields. After she recognized this virtual sky world as its master, although it went through some preliminary cleaning, the layout didn't change. It was still arranged by its previous master. Now that she summoned the 2 stone sculpture puppets, they quickly cleared the bamboo forest in front of the huts, leaving only half of the forest in the back. Then, she used the chopped bamboos to build several huts in the open space. When the stone sculpture puppets finished building all the huts, Mo Tiange walked towards the largest one. She opened her hand, causing several formation discs to fly out and be placed in the corresponding positions. She made extremely complicated hand seals and shot spiritual aura, causing all the formation discs to light up. Then, she threw the last formation flag and the whole formation was activated. She then put her hand into her Qiankuan bag, took out a pill furnace, and put it in the center. This pill furnace was about 2 feet square, covered in dense purple aura, and shrouded in spiritual light. It was the purple wooden furnace Zhong Yuling gave her. After taking out the purple wooden furnace and confirming there were no problems, Mo Tiange once again, she gave her divine comprehension, she ordered the 2 stone sculpture puppets to use. While the puppets were busy, Tiange wasn't idle either. She reached into her robe and fished out something. It was none other than the Sunstone Wanderer Ziwei gave her. She took out the Dragon of the World bag and zhong with the zhong with the cultivator, and the purple cave, zhong had with Mo, Chendao, and Ling with zhong with the puppets, Mo zhong with, she didn't with she, with she, with Mo with Mo with she, Mo with Yang. Holding the sunlight stone in her palm, she took out a talisman brush from her robe with her other hand. Soon after, she used her divine comprehension to force out a drop of blood essence. She dipped the talisman brush in the blood essence and quickly drew lines around the purple wooden furnace. These lines seemed unreasonable, but once they were drawn on the purple wooden furnace, they shone brightly as if they were real. After she finished drawing, Tiange put away the brush, opened the purple wooden furnace, and put the sunlight stone inside. She then made a series of complicated hand seals and sealed the sunlight stone at the bottom of the furnace. Once she was done, she felt a wave of tiredness. Blood essence was a person's foundation. Every drop was extremely precious. Even though she was a foundation-building cultivator, losing one drop still made her tired. She sat down cross-legged, took several medicinal pills, and circulated her spiritual aura in her body several times before she finally felt a bit better. At that moment, the 2 stone sculpture puppets had finished arranging the concocting room. The water from the brook was drawn into the small room through a bamboo pipe, dripping into the small pond. She put away the stone sculpture puppets, pondered for a moment, and decided on the type of medicinal pills she would concoct this time. Healing medicinal pills were necessary, but detoxification and mind-calming medicinal pills were also indispensable. Last time in Ziwei's Immortal's cave, fortunately, Daoist Fangjing brought several mind-calming talismans with him. Otherwise, she would have had to spend a lot of effort. By the time she finished concocting all these medicinal pills, several days had already passed. During this time, she specifically told the maids sent to serve her that she wanted to cultivate clear-headed for several days and not to disturb her if there was nothing important. After that, she prepared some tools that could be used to lay formations temporarily. Time was tight, so she didn't have time to study the Xuanji formation book. However, her attainments in formations had always surpassed cultivators of the same generation, so she was able to lay several sets of formations very quickly, including the 4 symbols 100 flowers formation. If she could finish laying this compound formation, even if she encountered a demonic beast in the 5th rank or above, she wouldn't be completely powerless. In the last few days, Tiange did nothing but closed her eyes, meditated, and adjusted her breath, making her body and mind reach their best state. 10 days later, she came out of the virtual sky world, removed the formation she laid in the igloo, and walked out of the igloo. Jiang Shanghong was already waiting outside. When he saw her coming out, he smiled. Junior Marshal Brother Yi really kept his word. 10 days is 10 days. Tiange nodded with a smile. Since I promised Senior Marshal Brother Jiang, how could I go back on my word? At that moment, the 2 of them suddenly looked up and saw several flight lights flitting across the sky, eventually disappearing in the north. Junior Marshal Brother Yi, Jiang Shanghong said, it seems they've already gone. Let's go too. The they, Jiang Shanghong mentioned were the fellow disciples he'd made an appointment with. Tiange nodded. The 2 of them immediately used their respective methods, turning into 2 flight lights and swiftly flying away. After flying for about half a day, the 2 of them once again arrived at the Arctic Sea they went to that day. In the distance, Tiange saw several foundation-building cultivators hovering in the air above the seaside. There were both men and women, and based on their clothes, they were Zhengfa sect disciples. Jiang Shanghong immediately led Tiange over. Senior Marshal brothers and sisters, I'm late. Please forgive me. Jiang Shanghong raised his hand to greet everyone with a smile. Tiange saw that his current behavior and way of doing things were indeed completely different from before. These Zhengfa sect disciples also saluted him back, but there was one person who didn't move. It seemed he was too arrogant to return the salute. Jiang Shanghong naturally also saw it, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he turned to introduce Mo Tienge to his fellow disciples. This is junior martial sister Yi Xiaotian from Xianxia School. She's also an old friend of mine. Junior martial sister Ye's cultivation level is outstanding, so I specially invited her. Mo Tienge, who deliberately wore Xianxia School's Daoist robes today, cupped her hands towards them in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. I'm Yi Xiaotian. Greetings to fellow Daoists from Zhengfa sect. Upon hearing Jiang Shanghong's introduction, the Zhengfa sect cultivators' gazes fell on Mo Tienge. Amazement flitted across the male cultivators' eyes, but the two female cultivators' gazes were vigilant. Nevertheless, all of them returned the salute. Xianxia School was very powerful now. Compared to Tiandao sect, the number one cultivation group in the celestial pole, it even seemed to surpass them. Even though Zhengfa sect was located in the northernmost area, they still didn't dare to neglect them. Even the most arrogant male cultivator also stared at Mo Tienge and raised his hand to return the salute. Senior martial brothers and senior martial sisters. Jiang Shanghong smiled and said, I acted on my own initiative and invited junior martial sister Yi here. You won't take offense, right? Everyone remained silent and shifted their gazes towards the arrogant male cultivator. That male cultivator was looking at Mo Tienge. Upon hearing Jiang Shanghong's words, he shifted his gaze towards Mo Tienge but immediately withdrew it. Since you're a junior martial sister from Xianxia School, let's come together. Jiang Shanghong finally heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that person relenting. He raised his hand and said, Thank you, senior martial brother Ren. That person still didn't respond and just stood there motionlessly. Jiang Shanghong didn't mind. He turned towards Mo Tienge and said, Junior martial sister Yi, come, let me introduce you. Calling her junior martial brother Yi in front of outsiders was really strange, so he changed the way he addressed her. Among the 6 men and 2 women in front of them, the arrogant male cultivator with the highest cultivation level was in the late stage of the foundation building realm. The other 2 male cultivators were in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, while the rest, including Jiang Shanghong, were all in the early stage of the foundation building realm. Jiang Shanghong introduced them one by one. This is senior martial brother Lu Rongxing, senior martial brother Xiang Jiang, senior martial brother Qiu Zhiming, junior martial brother Tang Fong, and junior martial brother Yu Xiaoran. He then moved on to the 2 female cultivators. This is senior martial sister Ai Xian, senior martial sister Xia. Mo Tienge once again saluted them. Among these people, Lu Rongxing and Xiang Jiang were in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, while the others were in the early stage. The male cultivators were obviously more enthusiastic towards her, but the 2 female cultivators were lukewarm, which made Mo Tienge feel a bit strange. Finally, it was the arrogant male cultivator with the highest cultivation level. Jiang Shanghong put him last, but it was unclear whether he was being cautious or for some other reason. This is senior martial brother Ren Yufeng, our leader this time. Senior martial brother Ren is our martial uncle Buki's inner disciple. Not only is his cultivation level high, but his skills are also outstanding. Although Jiang Shanghong said that, his tone was indifferent. Greetings, senior martial brother Ren. Mo Tienge clasped her hands. Since she called Jiang Shanghong senior martial brother, she naturally had to call him senior martial brother. Between friends, they usually called each other senior martial brother or junior martial brother. Ren Yufeng returned the salute, then finally said, Junior martial sister Yi, you're really young and promising. From what I see, you shouldn't be more than 80 years old, right? Mo Tienge smiled but didn't deny it. She maintained her appearance as if she was 20 years old. Based on the lifespan of foundation building cultivators, if she was 80 years old or younger, she would have her normal appearance instead of the effects of a look-preserving pill. Although look-preserving pills could keep one's appearance unchanged, experienced cultivators would most likely be able to see some clues. Probably because people were getting older, some of their behaviors and actions would naturally be different. Senior martial brother Ren is too polite. I was just lucky. Lucky? Ren Yufeng chuckled then said meaningfully, if you could make a realm breakthrough just because you were lucky, wouldn't the world be full of high-level cultivators? His words were a bit strange, so Imo just smiled and didn't say anything. Ren Yufeng swept his gaze over everyone then said, good people, everyone's here, we can set out now. No one had any objections. A group of 10 people rode on their flying magic tools then flew towards that huge iceberg together. Imo and Jiang Shanghong were at the very back. Imo thought for a moment then sent Jiang Shanghong a secret message. Senior Martial Brother Jiang, why are their attitudes so strange? It seems like your senior martial sisters don't really welcome me. A strange smile appeared on Jiang Shanghong's face. He also sent her a secret message. Junior Martial Brother Yi, you've probably been disguised as a man for too long that you've forgotten you're a woman, right? It's perfectly normal for my 2 senior martial sisters to dislike you. Women simply can't bear to see other people prettier than them. Jiang Shanghong explained, Junior Martial Brother Yi, there's something you don't know, but in our northernmost area, there are glaciers everywhere. It's an expanse of white, so if you look at it, you'll have an illusion. The land of Hiding Dragon is actually thousands of miles away. So that's how it is. To a Foundation establishment cultivator, several thousand li would indeed take a long time to fly. After flying for a while, the iceberg finally came closer. It wasn't until she saw it that she realized the magnificence of this iceberg wasn't inferior to the other mountains in Kunwu. The majesty of Kunwu lay in its vast mountains that stretched for over 10,000 li. Each mountain was connected to another, and the scenery was different from each other. Some were steep and marvelous, some were graceful and calm. However, the iceberg in front of them just stood there by itself. The several thousand feet tall ice peak was lonely and silent, as if it had been overlooking the northernmost ocean ever since time immemorial. It watched the surrounding icebergs drift and the sea turn into mulberry fields while it stood there alone forever. This was a kind of solitary and proud beauty. Jiang Shanghong looked up and said, according to the legends of the northernmost people, this iceberg was here from the beginning. Other icebergs melted, disappeared, or drifted away, but it was the only one that remained like this since ancient times. Why didn't it melt? Imo couldn't help but ask. Under the sunlight, every ice peak was sparkling and translucent, looking magnificent and magnificent. I don't know. This time, the one who answered was Ren Yufeng. His cultivation level was the highest among them and he was also their leader, so he was currently standing at the forefront. The land of Hiding Dragon is like this. Even nascent soul grandmasters can't answer these questions. Maybe we'll have to wait until we become deification cultivators before we can answer some of them. Ren Yufeng's gaze swept over them. Junior martial brothers and sisters, are you ready? If you're ready, we'll go in now. Imo looked at Jiang Shanghong. Before this trip, Jiang Shanghong said she needed some special things, but he'd prepare them for her. At that moment, Jiang Shanghong took out a palm-sized pouch and handed it to Imo Junior martial sister Yi, these are bubble fruits. After eating one, a water-repelling barrier will form around your body that can last for a day. There are several dozens of them here, so they should be enough. Bubble fruit? What a childish name. Imo took the pouch and imitated them. She took out a plum-like fruit, took a bite and swallowed it. And the taste wasn't bad, it was a bit sweet. Jiang Shanghong also ate one then moved closer to her and said, this fruit is unique to the northernmost land. It's often used to coax children. While they were speechless, Ren Yufeng led everyone to dive into the water. Imo saw that they didn't use a defensive barrier, but after they went into the water, a water-repelling barrier automatically formed around their bodies. This bubble fruit really lived up to its name. After diving several hundred feet into the water, everyone finally stopped. Ren Yufeng took out a jade talisman then muttered some unknown incantation. Several streams of spiritual aura hit the surface of the ice, causing ripples on the surface of the ice to ripple. A black hole slowly appeared on the surface of the ice, which was flat and flawless a moment ago. This was an extremely brilliant restriction, but even with Emo Tienga's attainments in formations, she couldn't see any clues. Apparently, the nascent soul grandmasters of Zhengfa sect also attached great importance to this place. But this made Emo Tienga even more puzzled. Since this was Zhengfa sect's important place, why did they invite her, a disciple from another cultivation group, to come? Jiang Shanghong trusted her, so why didn't the others have any objections? Without much time to think, Ren Yufeng already turned around. Under the water, his voice sounded a bit distorted. Junior martial brothers and sisters, we're going in now. Be careful. Everyone cupped their hands and responded with solemn expressions on their faces. At that moment, Emo Tienga actually wanted to laugh. This was her first time seeing such a scene. There were so many foundation-building cultivators, and every one of them was talking with a bubble above their head. It was really interesting. Under Ren Yufeng's lead, the 10 of them slowly passed through the black hole. Emo Tienga followed behind them. Jiang Shanghong deliberately asked her to swim in front of him. Once they passed through the hole, the scenery in front of them changed, and they instantly felt warm all over. There was only ice and water under the northernmost sea, but inside this iceberg, there was actually a vast expanse of blue ocean. Inside the ocean, there were lush aquatic plants and shoals of fish. The water refracted specks of light. It was completely a scene of a warm ocean. Emo Tienga looked up. She even felt that the surface of the water and the sunlight weren't far from her. A shoal of finger-sized silver fish swam over. Under the refraction of water and light, their silvery white scales shone with silvery light, looking extremely wonderful. She was somewhat fascinated by this kind of scenery. She even wanted to reach out and stroke these silver fish, but behind her, Jiang Shanghong's expression suddenly changed. A sword appeared in his hand and he slashed it towards the shoal of fish. Emo Tienga was startled. When she turned around to look, she discovered that everyone else also had the same expression and each of them had taken out their magic tools. No matter how stupid she was, she should have realized there was something wrong with these silver fish. She immediately took out the shuttle of flying Apsara, causing a golden ray to scatter. However, since she was underwater, her strength was somewhat lacking, so she was obviously a lot slower. Once she realized this problem, Emo Tienga pondered inwardly. These Zhengfa sect disciples came here all year round, so their attacks weren't hindered in the slightest. She, on the other hand, was hindered by the water, so her strength was reduced. This was very disadvantageous to her. With the 10 foundation-building cultivators taking action, this shoal of small fish was quickly wiped out. While everyone was cleaning up the scene, Emo Tienga asked Jiang Shanghong in a low voice, "Senior martial brother Jiang, these small fish only have a little bit of spiritual aura. They're basically not demonic beasts, so why are they?" Jiang Shanghong put away his sword and said, "Junior martial sister Yi, these fish indeed aren't demonic beasts, but they have strange teeth. If we're touched by them, they'll bite us. They can even bite through our protective barriers." Emo Tienga was shocked. She'd never heard of anything that wasn't a demonic beast being able to harm cultivators. Sure enough, the world was big. Nothing was too strange. Then, the seemingly harmless water plants actually stretched out their tentacles, trying to entangle them. There were even huge mouths in the bushes that wanted to swallow them whole. It had only been 2 hours since they entered the interior of this iceberg, but they'd already encountered several fierce battles in succession. Only then did Emo Tienga understand what Jiang Shanghong meant. When facing these strange creatures, they had to be vigilant at all times. Things that seemed harmless might actually kill them. Therefore, danger lurked everywhere here. There were many small things that you might not notice, but they were actually dangerous things. However, if you were vigilant all the time, killing these seemingly harmless things wasn't difficult at all. By the time they finished killing a group of transparent jellyfish, they'd already arrived at a huge coral reef. The coral had a bright red luster. Emo Tienga could see that these corals were full of spiritual aura, so they could be considered treasures. At this moment, the leader, Ren Yufeng, stopped. He turned around and said, "Junior martial brothers and sisters, These red flame corals are hard to come by, so we can pick as many as we want. However, there might be some dangerous little things hidden among them, so you must be careful." Everyone nodded and agreed. Soon afterward, they scattered in all directions, looking for a piece that caught their fancy. Jiang Shanghong also pulled Mo Tiange to a spot and said, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, these red flame corals are at least 1,000 years old. Let's pick some of them and take them back. Even if we don't get anything else later, this trip won't be in vain." Corals were only used in a few special pill recipes. They had never been used in tool refining, so they weren't very valuable. Nevertheless, they were still spiritual objects that were 1,000 years old and rarely circulated in the world. If they kept some of them, they might be able to use them in the future. Jiang Shanghong had already taken out his flying sword and was carefully cutting a clump of coral. Mo Tiange imitated him. She also took out her own small flying sword and carefully cut a piece of coral. After confirming there was no danger, she finally put it into her Qiankuan bag. After collecting several pieces, Mo Tiange finally stopped. She wasn't greedy. Ren Yufeng said there might be danger in these coral clumps, so taking these risks for things that weren't too precious wasn't worth it. After a while, Ren Yufeng also spoke. "That'll do. Everyone, stop. Don't pick too many, it won't be worth it if there's danger." Once he spoke, all the Zhengfa sect cultivators obediently stopped, collected their harvests, and moved closer to him. Everyone gathered together, but Ren Yufeng didn't seem to have any intention of moving forward. Instead, he swept his gaze over everyone with a very solemn expression. In the end, his gaze fell on Mo Tiange, but he said to Jiang Shanghong, "Junior Martial Brother Jiang, have you told Junior Martial Sister Yi about the purpose of this trip?" Chapter 177. Mo Tiange frowned slightly. Sure enough, Jiang Shanghong had something he didn't say. Jiang Shanghong glanced at her, then said to Ren Yufeng, "I haven't told you in detail." Ren Yufeng said, "Then it's time." Mo Tiange turned to look at Jiang Shanghong, waiting for his explanation. Although she already knew this matter wasn't that simple, she still felt unhappy now that it was laid out in front of her. Faced with her gaze, Jiang Shanghong coughed and said somewhat uncomfortably, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, don't be angry. I didn't say it before because this matter is very important. My previous promise is still valid now. I didn't say it clearly because it was inconvenient." Mo Tiange merely raised the corner of her lips, declining to comment. She had already guessed it, so she wasn't very angry. However, if she didn't care too much about it, people might think she had no temper. Upon seeing Jiang Shanghong's awkward expression, Ren Yufeng interrupted, "Let me say it." Jiang Shanghong looked at him, hesitated for a moment, but in the end he retreated. Mo Tiange watched him coldly. With Ren Yufeng's arrogant behavior, how could Jiang Shanghong dare to object to him? It seemed what Jiang Shanghong said to her before was true. He was only an ordinary disciple and was in a weak position in front of fellow disciples of Zhengfa sect. Facing her, Ren Yufeng put away his previous arrogance and said sternly, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, if you don't agree to what I'm going to say next, I'll let you go. However, you have to swear on your inner demon that you'll never say anything." Mo Tiange frowned slightly. What could be so serious? She said faintly, "Senior Martial Brother Ren, just say it. So what if I agree or not? Everyone here is your fellow disciples, so it'll be very easy to deal with me." Ren Yufeng choked on her words, and Jiang Shanghong even turned his head away. That was indeed their plan. In any case, she was alone, so if she didn't agree, they could use force to threaten her. However, Mo Tiange said it so bluntly, causing their faces to burn. After all, bullying a single woman really wasn't something to be proud of. Nevertheless, Ren Yufeng's skin was thick enough, so he quickly regained his composure. He said, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, do you think the masters in the group would allow us to tell others about a place like the Land of Hiding Dragon where we can often find unique treasures?" Upon hearing what he said, Mo Tiange cast a glance at Jiang Shanghong. "So you're saying everything Senior Martial Brother Jiang said before was false?" Of course not. Jiang Shanghong hastily denied it. The land of Hiding Dragon is indeed a place where we can often find treasures. Aside from the fact that it's a secret of our school, everything else is true. Mo Tiange turned to look at Ren Yufeng. Then what did senior martial brother Ren mean? We'll have to start from the time we entered the land of Hiding Dragon. Ren Yufeng stared sharply at Mo Tiange as if he was observing her expression. He said slowly, 3 months ago, I, Junior Martial Brother Xiang, Junior Martial Brother Tang, and Junior Martial Brother Jiang entered the land of Hiding Dragon together and discovered a secret place. Unfortunately, the 4 of us weren't strong enough, so we returned in low spirits. In the following months, we've been looking for trustworthy people to enter with us so we can find treasures. What does that have to do with me? Mo Tiange was puzzled. Fellow disciples like you are more trustworthy than an outsider like me. If you want to look for companions, you should look for your fellow disciples. Let's talk about this secret place first, Ren Yufeng said. The last time we entered this place, we accidentally encountered a 5th-rank demonic beast as soon as we entered. Although a 5th-rank demonic beast is equivalent to a cultivator in the core formation realm, it's not like the 4 of us didn't have the power to fight it. What's worse is that this demonic beast has an extremely strong resistance to water and ice element spells. Junior Martial Sister, ye must know that our Zhengfa sect is built on the northernmost glaciers, and all the disciples in our sect practice water and ice element cultivation techniques. Even our magic tools are of this type, so we could only retreat in defeat. So you wanted to find a cultivator who isn't a disciple of your sect to deal with this demonic beast. Correct. Seeing that there was nothing unusual about her expression, Ren Yufeng relaxed a bit and said frankly, unfortunately, our Zhengfa sect is located in the northernmost region, so outsiders rarely come here. Even if there are foreign cultivators, we don't want them if their cultivation levels aren't high enough or if their character isn't reliable. Previously, I already had the idea to go to Kunwu to find a suitable candidate. Mo Tiange was silent. If it was really as they said, this matter wasn't unacceptable. As soon as Junior Martial Sister Yi arrived in the northernmost region, Junior Martial Brother Jiang had the idea and sent me a message to ask whether it was feasible. He guaranteed you were a trustworthy person, so I agreed. In other words, Jiang Shanghong had a premeditated plan from the beginning. As she thought up to this point, Mo Tiange glanced at him expressionlessly. Although the matter wasn't serious, she still felt unhappy. She didn't mind self-interest, but she really minded being dragged into a matter without permission. Jiang Shanghong was a bit embarrassed. He seemed to want to explain, but in the end, he gave up. All right, Senior Martial Brother Ren, please tell me what I need to pay attention to. Also, what I'll get in the end, what I have to give. Of course. Upon seeing that she agreed, Ren Yufeng smiled. First of all, I want to tell Junior Martial Sister Yi that the level of danger inside isn't much different from the first layer of the land of Hiding Dragon. It's just that there's a 5th-rank demonic beast guarding the door. Although 5th-rank demonic beasts are equivalent to core formation cultivators, they're not core formation cultivators, so their intelligence is far inferior to humans. I've already thought of a way to deal with this demonic beast. What Junior Martial Sister Yi has to do is listen to my instructions and attack it. Since Junior Martial Sister Yi has become our companion, you can naturally get a share of the treasures. As for how much you get, it'll depend on how much you do. Mo Tiange nodded. She could accept all of this, but, Senior Martial Brother Ren, it's not that I don't trust you, but I'm alone on this trip, so it's really a bit. She paused and swept her gaze over everyone in front of her. Ren Yufeng understood what she meant, so he asked, Junior Martial Sister Yi, if you have any requests, just say them. If I can agree to them, I'll definitely agree. All right. Mo Tiange said bluntly, I want Senior Martial Brother Ren to make an oath that you won't hurt me on this trip. If you succeed in the end, you'll definitely let me leave safely. Ren Yufeng was silent. He naturally understood what she wanted him to make an oath. Just now, he asked Mo Tiange to make a heart demon oath if she didn't agree. Now, Mo Tiange only asked him to come back. He clenched his teeth then said heavily, "Fine." Upon hearing his answer, Ai Xian, a female cultivator from Xianxia sect, cried out involuntarily, "Senior Martial Brother Ren, how could you do that?" Ren Yufeng swept a glance at her then said faintly, "Junior Martial Sister Ye's concerns aren't unreasonable. Besides, if I don't intend to violate your promise, it doesn't matter if I make an oath or not." Mo Tiange smiled. Senior Martial Brother Ren is really bold. Junior Martial Sister feels ashamed of her inferiority. Although she said that, she didn't take back what she said. There were 9 people on the other side, and she was alone. Who knew if they wouldn't want to share a share of the loot with her and would try to rob her of the treasures she had? Although Jiang Shanghong was familiar with her and probably wouldn't harm her, his status wasn't high enough, so he still had to see what Ren Yufeng thought. Among these people, Ren Yufeng, who had the highest status, was only an inner disciple of a core formation cultivator. Presumably, even if he had magic weapons or whatnot, they wouldn't be of high grade, so it wasn't impossible for him to covet them. I, Ren Yufeng, swear by my inner demon that I won't harm Junior Martial Sister Yi Xiaotian on this trip. I'll also restrain my fellow disciples and let Junior Martial Sister Yi leave safely afterward. After thinking up to this point, he opened his eyes and looked at Mo Tiange. Is this okay? Seeing that Ren Yufeng had indeed made a heart demon oath, Mo Tiange immediately smiled and said, "That being the case, Senior Martial Brother Ren can continue. I have no more questions." Everyone heaved sighs of relief when they heard what she said. Ren Yufeng then said, "All right, since Junior Martial Sister Yi has no objections, we'll start preparing. Everyone knows what we need to prepare, so let's get started." Right after he finished speaking, everyone started to get busy. Mo Tiange didn't know what they were going to do, but Jiang Shanghong came over and said, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, this is Xianxia sect's cold ice protective talisman. That 5th rank demonic beast also belongs to the water element, so it'll be safer if you carry it with you." Mo Tiange took the talisman then said faintly, "Thank you, Senior Martial Brother Jiang, for your consideration." Her words were neither cold nor warm. She didn't seem angry, but she also didn't seem to have any intention of forgiving her, causing Jiang Shanghong to have a bellyful of words to say. Feeling helpless, he could only turn around and continue with his own matter. Aside from Mo Tiange, the other 9 Xianxia sect cultivators followed Ren Yufeng's instructions. Each of them chose a position and laid spirit stones around themselves, seemingly preparing some kind of formation. Mo Tiange watched them for a while. With her attainments in formations, she could tell they were laying a defensive fortification formation. However, she didn't understand why they laid a formation here. Before long, the fortification formation was finally laid. Ren Yufeng called out, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, please come here." At that moment, aside from Ren Yufeng and Xiang Jiang, all of them walked towards the center of the formation. Mo Tiange also walked over. Upon seeing that they all entered the formation, Ren Yufeng said, "Junior Martial Brothers and Sisters, stay here. In a moment, Junior Martial Brother Xiang and I will lure that 5th rank water carp beast over. At that time, you'll need to activate the formation. You must withstand it. Junior Martial Sister Yi, you don't need to worry about anything. When the time comes, we'll naturally protect you. You just need to focus on using powerful magic tools and spells to attack it." The Xianxia sect cultivators all nodded. Mo Tiange responded with a yes. She hoped Ren Yufeng would keep his promise. If that was the case, she would actually be the most relaxed among them. At that moment, aside from Mo Tiange, the other 7 people were already standing in their respective positions. This was the position of the Big Dipper. The one with the highest cultivation level, Lu Rongxing, stood at the forefront to preside over the formation. As for Mo Tiange, she stood in the very center, precisely the position where the formation would protect her. Ren Yufeng and Xiang Jiang's whereabouts were also unknown. Mo Tiange guessed they made the 8 of them stay here because it was a way to deal with that demonic beast. It was also possible that the secret place required a special method to open, so they didn't want them to see it. Before long, Lu Rongxing shouted, "It's here, Once they heard what he said, the 7 people each took out their magic tools and gathered their spiritual aura. When their magic tools were overflowing with spiritual aura, Lu Rongsheng shouted, "Activate the formation." The 7 people raised their spirit tools at the same time. 7 streams of spiritual aura hit the 7 eyes of the formation. The spiritual aura soared into the sky, but all of them were blue. Yunfa sect cultivators all practiced water element cultivation techniques, so their spiritual aura was naturally the same. The 7 streams of spiritual aura converged above the formation, forming a protective cover that firmly protected the 8 people inside the formation. Emotienga also took out several magic weapons and magic tools, preparing herself for the battle. Her divine sense was stronger than Lu Rongsheng's, not weaker. Although she wasn't as agile as Zhengfa sect cultivators underwater, she had long sensed that Ren Yufeng and Xiang Jiang had returned. Now that the formation was activated, the aura of that 5th-rank demonic beast was already assaulting them. Chapter 178. This wasn't Emotienga's first time facing a 5th-rank demonic beast, but it was her first time fighting underwater. In the distance, Ren Yufeng and Xiang Jiang were rushing over. She didn't know what kind of escaping technique they used, but their speed in the water was actually faster than on land. Presumably, Zhengfa sect was good at water spells, so using escaping water in the water complemented each other. The 2 of them rushed over and shouted, "Formation!" Lu Rongsheng immediately waved the wooden sword in his hand and shouted, "Open the formation." The 7 of them cast their spells together. A bright light burst out of the defensive formation, opening a gap. Ren Yufeng and Xiang Jiang flew inside. Lu Rongsheng shouted again, "Close the formation." The gap emitted a spiritual light and closed in an instant. Just as the defensive barrier closed, the water carp beast's aura ferociously rushed over. For a moment, the faces of the 10 people inside the barrier turned pale. Although they'd long thought of a way to deal with this beast, it was still a demonic beast equivalent to a core formation cultivator. Its powerful momentum when it rushed over was hard for foundation-building cultivators like them to take it seriously. Ren Yufeng shouted, "Junior Martial Brothers, calm down. Our 7 stars absolute formation can definitely block it." As he spoke, the water carp beast had already seen the people in front of it. Demonic beasts usually acted on instinct, let alone one that was already enraged. The water carp beast was about to crash into them. Emotienga tried her best to stay calm. Looking from inside the formation, this water carp beast was even bigger than the 10 of them combined. Its whole body was as dark as ink, and it looked like an ordinary carp, but it had a huge head and crisscrossed black teeth in its mouth. It was indeed terrifyingly ugly. When the water carp beast crashed into them, the momentum of a 5th-rank demonic beast was extremely fierce. Emotienga almost thought they would be swallowed by this demonic beast in one bite. However, the blue defensive barrier blocked it. When the demonic beast crashed into the barrier, the blue light flickered, but it was still blocked. Upon seeing this, not only Emotienga, but Ren Yufeng and the others also heaved sighs of relief. They laid this formation because they were confident in it, but their confidence still needed to be verified in reality. Now that they saw the water carp beast was indeed blocked, smiles appeared on their faces. Junior Martial Brothers and Sisters. Everyone saw it, act according to the plan. Everyone responded and stuck to their positions. Ren Yufeng said to Emotienga, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, this water carp beast has a very powerful spell, but it takes a long time to cast. Once this spell is over, we will temporarily open the formation. At that time, you can attack with all your might." All right. This wasn't difficult. However, after thinking about it, she asked Ren Yufeng, "Senior Martial Brother Ren, when we open the formation, will it? Junior Sister Yi, just believe me." Before she could finish her question, Ren Yufeng interrupted her. He stared nervously at the water carp beast in front of him and simply didn't feel like answering her question. The arrogant temperament he had when they first met had unknowingly resurfaced. Emotienga wrinkled her brows but didn't say anything. In Shenxing School, There really weren't many people who dared to talk to her like this. As Lord Daoist Jinghe's disciple, how could other people dare to provoke her? This Ren Yufeng's temper really wasn't small, but Imo didn't know whether he had the strength to match his temper or not. Just as Imo was deep in thought, Ren Yufeng suddenly shouted, "Now! Open the formation!" Upon hearing what he said, Lu Rongxing waved the wooden sword in his hand. "Open the formation!" In an instant, a crack appeared in the defensive barrier above their heads. Ren Yufeng shouted again, "Attack!" Imo raised her hand. The shuttle of flying Apsara flew out of the crack in the formation, turned into a golden ray and shot towards the water carp beast. At the same time, Ren Yufeng and Xianxia's magic tools also arrived, but they were only flying swords. Presumably, they didn't have time to refine magic tools with attributes of the other 5 elements, so they could only use the most common flying swords. Ren Yufeng's and Xianxia's flying swords rapidly slashed towards the water carp beast, but this demonic beast's skin was very tough. When the 2 flying swords slashed at it, they only managed to leave a white mark on its skin. They were basically unable to pierce into its body. Imo attacked with her shuttle of flying Apsara. The golden ray circled around the water carp beast. At that moment, the 2 people's flying swords had already returned in defeat. Ren Yufeng said anxiously, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, hurry." Imo didn't even spare him a glance. The golden ray fell from above and suddenly pierced the water carp beast's body. The water carp beast screamed in pain and suddenly went berserk. Ren Yufeng and the others were delighted. At least Imo magic tools could harm this demonic beast, so this trip wasn't in vain. "Junior Martial Sister Yi," Ren Yufeng shouted, "it's up to you." Imo didn't say anything. She took out a stack of high-grade talismans and threw them. She saw that the raging sand outside was actually several earth element talismans. This water carp beast's attribute was water, and earth restrained water, so these talismans just happened to hit its weak point. The water carp beast was furious. It swung its tail and fiercely hit the defensive barrier. The blue defensive barrier trembled, and Lu Rongxing, who was in charge of the formation, vomited a mouthful of blood. Even though they were prepared, the furious attack of a 5th-rank demonic beast wasn't easy to withstand. Seeing that the water carp beast had gone berserk and seemed to be preparing some kind of spell, Ren Yufeng shouted, "Stop attacking! Close the formation!" Upon hearing him, Imo circulated her spiritual aura, immediately withdrawing the shuttle of flying Apsara and closing the formation. Seeing that these people could only see it but couldn't hit it, the water carp beast became furious again. It swung its tail and hit the defensive barrier with all its might. After several hits, Lu Rongxing vomited several mouthfuls of blood. Upon seeing this, Ren Yufeng immediately ordered, "Junior Martial Brother Xiang, replace Junior Martial Brother Lu." Xianxia answered and walked to Lu Rongxing's position. He then took out his own magic tool. It was a jade tablet. Imo frowned slightly upon seeing this. Xianxia replaced Lu Rongxing. Lu Rongxing's injuries were too heavy, so he couldn't fight for the time being. That left only Ren Yufeng and her to attack. The damage of Ren Yufeng's flying sword was limited, so she didn't have much confidence in dealing with a 5th-rank demonic beast by herself. But in this situation she couldn't retreat even if she wanted to, so she could only clench her teeth and persevere. "Junior Martial Sister Yi." During this gap, Ren Yufeng glanced at her hand and said, "Your magic tool is really powerful." Imo said faintly, "It was given to me by my master when I was building my foundation. Fortunately, it's come in handy." "Is that so?" Ren Yufeng asked. "Junior Martial Sister Yi, who's your master in Xianxia school?" "When I was young, I also traveled to Kunwu, so I know several seniors in Xianxia school. Maybe I happen to know Junior Martial Sister Ye's master." Imo chuckled then said vaguely, "I'm a disciple of Clear Spring Peak. My master hasn't gone out for many years, so Senior Martial Brother Ren probably doesn't know him." "Oh." She spoke so vaguely, but Ren Yufeng was also a perceptive person. He could tell she didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't continue asking. He just stared at her thoughtfully for a while before continuing to watch the water carp beast outside. Xianxia's 7 stars absolute formation was indeed outstanding. Even though the water carp beast was enraged, it still firmly withstood the attacks. The time to open the formation for the second time soon arrived. This time, the water carp beast was already slightly injured, so Ren Yufeng's flying sword was finally effective. It left a slight cut on the water carp beast's body. Emotienga still attacked with the shuttle of flying apsara, mixed with flying needles and small flying knives. Unfortunately, this water carp beast's skin was really thick. Aside from the shuttle of flying apsara, nothing else could do much damage to it. As for talismans, she'd already thrown out several high-grade talismans, so she didn't have many left. She didn't want to waste any more. After grinding for a while, the water carp beast's temper was once again provoked, so the formation closed again. This repeated several times. The water carp beast was helpless against them, and it also suffered many small injuries. Finally, its strength was somewhat exhausted, and its movements also started to slow down. Seeing this situation, Ren Yufeng said happily, "Everyone, be more alert. The water carp beast's movements are slow, we'll be able to grind it to death soon." Upon hearing Ren Yufeng's reminder, the Xianxia sect cultivators who were painstakingly guarding the eye of the formation glanced at the water carp beast. Their spirits were all shaken. Even Lu Rongxing, who was sitting cross-legged to heal his injuries, also opened his eyes in excitement. Xiang Jiang, who was in charge of the formation in Lu Rongxing's place, also raised his head to take a look. He then said weakly, "Senior Martial Brother Ren, if this doesn't work, I won't be able to hold on for much longer." For such a strengthened defensive formation, the person in charge of the formation had to endure a lot more attacks than the others. Among them, including Emotienga, there were only 3 middle-stage foundation-building cultivators and 1 late-stage foundation-building cultivator. Ren Yufeng had to take command, and Emotienga didn't understand Xianxia's cultivation technique, so only Lu Rongxing and Xiang Jiang could preside over this formation. Lu Rongxing was already exhausted, so no one could replace Xiang Jiang. Seeing Xiang Jiang's condition, Ren Yufeng muttered to himself for a while, then said, "Junior Martial Brother Xiang, if you can't hold on for much longer, the next time we open the formation, we'd better work harder and directly kill this water carp beast." These words were actually directed at Emotienga. Emotienga was currently meditating. Although she didn't need to continuously output her spiritual aura, attacking a 5th-rank demonic beast really consumed a lot of her spiritual aura, so she could only make the best use of this time to quickly recover her spiritual aura. Emotienga opened her eyes and stood up. "Senior Martial Brother Ren, I don't have many talismans left, so I'm really not sure if I want to directly kill it next time." "Rest assured, Junior Martial Sister Yi," Ren Yufeng said anxiously, "your talismans are only useful. When we find the treasures, we'll give you more." Emotienga wanted to say that wasn't what she meant, but after thinking about it, she didn't say it. She still had a killing move she hadn't used because she always felt it wasn't the right time yet. However, she couldn't care about that now. Aside from her, these Xianxia sect cultivators didn't have any effective means to deal with this water carp beast. If she didn't use it and their defensive formation was broken, it'd be very difficult for her to get away with it. Just as she was thinking, the formation was activated once again. Ren Yufeng shouted, "Junior Martial Sister Yi, go all out." Right after he said that, his flying sword took the lead. Emotienga didn't hesitate. She threw the shuttle of flying apsara, and at the same time, her divine sense, which had been strengthened by the soul-refining art, also reached out. The tangible divine sense cultivated by the soul-refining art was extremely fine, and it couldn't be seen in the slightest. That 5th-rank water carp beast only sensed something pouncing on it, so it waved its fins, wanting to hit it. However, the tangible divine sense wasn't the same as other characteristics. The moment it waved its fins, Emotienga immediately dispersed this tangible divine sense, turning it back into an ordinary divine sense. The water carp beast moved its eyeballs in confusion. In the next second, Emotienga slightly gathered her divine sense again, then ruthlessly lashed it at the demonic beast. Gulp. The water carp beast grunted. Its primordial spirit was hit. The way to deal with the soul-refining art was very simple. Guard your mind and don't use your own divine sense. That way, your primordial spirit would be hidden deep inside your sea of knowledge, and no one could enter it at will. However, whether it was cultivators or demonic beasts, using their divine sense in battle was almost instinctive. Divine sense was like their eyes, so how could they possibly guard against this move? Demonic beasts in particular didn't have any intelligence, so using their divine sense was a subconscious action. Taking advantage of the fact that the water carp beast's primordial spirit was hit, Emotienga followed up with another attack. At the same time, she maneuvered the shuttle of flying Apsara to make it look like she was attacking. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.